There we go. Hello everyone. Oh, it's a little bit too loud, the music. Let me turn it down a little bit. Does that make any difference? No, of course it doesn't. There we go. A little bit for me. Hopefully you can still hear it. Hello everyone. My name is Fiona. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the host of What Am I Rolling? But also I am the host of the stream. I realised I hadn't done my test messages, so let me just put it in. RPG. And yeah, there you go. Nightbot is working. Yes, and welcome to Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPGs, a stream where I spend about 2 hours roughly, where I go through like an RPG stream to see like what works, what doesn't work, like what do I enjoy about it, and really, rather than anything else, it is just a way to make me accountable to read all the RPGs that I have collected in my place. And yeah, so it's been quite nice over the weekend. I've not had really that much to do in terms of like going out and about places. My partner is currently very busy at this weekend, so I thought, well, might as well do a couple of extra streams here and there, because I do have quite a bit of RPG stuff to reread, because I've got a few upcoming projects, which is really exciting, that I'm just going to peek into and just check from there, really. So thank you if you're going to be here watching live. If you're going to be watching later, appreciate you being here and stuff, because I know sometimes when you look at these books and you look at like actual plays and stuff, they don't actually tell you what the main mechanic is, and there's not an easy like quick way of looking at it. Now obviously you might not have 2 hours to spend to go through an RPG book, and that's totally fine, but you know, it helps me feel like what works as an RPG, what helps tell a good story, but also like I go, oh, that's really interesting, where else can I use it in a different game that's not necessarily D&D? And I think that's the thing for all these streams, that I want to be able to encourage people to look at other RPGs and go, I want to use that in my game, and encourage people to explore different RPG styles and different RPG settings and genres and the like, because no one RPG is for everyone, and I'm very, very strongly adhere to that sort of principle. Anyway, enough gubbins, enough middle of the afternoon sort of malarkey. Let's talk about today's RPG. I'm quite excited to talk about this one, actually. It is a game that I have run. It's an RPG I have run, and I think it's one of the most interesting, if incredibly, what's the right word for it? Incredibly structured, and a lot of thought has gone into this game and to make it work. Today we're going to look at The Good Society, a Jane Austen RPG by, Story Brewers Role-Playing. They're a cracking team of role-players. They've done their recent game is like Fight with Spirits. That's a sports drama RPG. Alas for the Awful Sea, Legal Minds is their upcoming one. They're generally such a lovely team. I've watched quite a few of their like actual plays and how-to videos, and I think they just come across really, really well, and I really, really enjoy their stuff. I have to say at the top, I'm not sponsored by them, but I thought I would show you the books, because after I ran this game recently, I think early January this year, and it's actually out as an actual play on a channel called Christine's Brain, if you want to go check it out. It's for some sort of like Valentine's Day special. And I think it worked really well, but I did get the physical books for it because I thought it'd just be nicer to have it. So this is what the physical actual book looks like, Good Society. It's a nice chunky book. It's gorgeous. Look at that cover pages. Like a very I love the artwork. It's written in such a clear language as well, and there's lots of essays at the end that talk about how to get into Jane Austen, because some people might not have read any period drama books. They might be coming into this sort of RPG through watching like Pride and Prejudice, any adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. We've also got Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte that's come out now, Lost in Austen, all those sort of TV shows which take inspiration from these initial novels and period dramas and stuff. And I mean, there are other ones as well. Anything by the Bronte sisters, anything by Thomas Hardy. Basically, you know, sort of, I think 1800s, 1900s. She says, not knowing anything about the what's it called now? It's going to tell me. That's going to tell me off now what the actual period is. But I just think there's something really neat about these stories, and that they are for everyone to try out and stuff, so would recommend checking it out. The other thing I'll show you is the many playset book you can get as well. So this is, the Expanded Acquaintance book, which has all the sort of playsets and how to run them, etc. Which again, you can get as PDFs as well. I will say that. You can get it on itch, you can get it on the Story Brewer stuff. I'll go through their website in a second. But also, I think it is important to say, with with this game, it uses quite a lot of certain types of cards, sort of play cards, which I can show on camera in a second as well. And obviously, if you're getting all the expansions as well, they all come with packs of cards as well. Now, you do not need to buy you do not need to buy them physically if you're not playing. You don't need to buy them if you're playing online. I would think. I do hope in future that they do a VTT model or like a Roll20. Maybe they do, and I'm not aware of it. But the cards help. Having the physical cards really helps, certainly around the table. The PDFs come with the cards, and you could print them. But again, if you're one of those people who doesn't really print stuff, or you have to use the work printer, sometimes it requires double side printing as well. So that's just something to make a note of. But I'll show you some of the absolutely gorgeous. It's like the artwork is beautiful. So let's show you Edwin, for example. So Edwin looks pretty cool there. There's some little bits of stats, etc. We'll go into what these cards mean when we get to it. And then you've got, I think these are relationship cards as well. The ones in the blue. And then the pink ones are desire cards, which are pretty good as well. And yeah, the base set is this set, so the one in green. And then we've got 3 other expansions that cover a whole range of different sort of playset styles, you know. So if you want to play a game that's inspired by, say, Upstairs Downstairs, a very popular British tabletop, you know, that sort of so I'm not going to get the name of that TV show right now. Not Bridgerton. We've said Bridgerton. The other one. The one with like Maggie Smith in it. I can't remember the name of it at all. But, you know, period drama is definitely something that is in the zeitgeist just now. And I think more and more people are getting into playing these stories because ultimately it's not stories about, you know, whilst it's sort of set in a historical period, it's about what is left unsaid and not being able to say things as you would normally, and it's all about this sort of repressed feelings and like in a certain structured kind of society and stuff. And it's really interesting to play those stories out and to have those missed opportunities as well, like, you know, the letter goes under the mat in the door, or your carriage just leaves before the message gets to you. So all those sort of things make for really interesting stories, which I think other RPG systems can't necessarily emulate or replicate per se. So that's why I thought I'd talk about Good Society as well, because I think it's one of the most different. It's one of the most interesting RPGs I've come across. And I'm going to say at the front, there's a lot of stuff to it. There's a lot of grafting, there's a lot of framework stuff, but there are rules, there are guidance of how to make your own custom playsets. So again, I'll go into the terminology when we get into it. And I think ultimately, like, it is very worthwhile. I want to say straight up at the front, this is not a one-shot game. This is even, I don't think even a 2-shot would cover it. It is definitely something which you would need to take your time over. I think 3 minimum sessions is what you need to cover the basis of what Good Society is. And it even suggests, and I know we'll get to it, that a full cycle of Good Society, like a whole series, should take between, I think, 7 to 9 sessions at least. And then within each session is a cycle of play, etc. And it's just, that's a lot of buy-in. You need a lot of buy-in at the front, and I think when you see a book like this, when you see all the instructions stuff, sometimes it's about seeing like a very complex board game, right? You go, oh god, or am I going to enjoy this compared to something that I'm more familiar with a RPG that I know will be completed in an evening? You know, what's the buy-in for the players? So I would hope, this is from my own experience, I would hope there is a way that we can make it so that it can be done in a one-shot. It can be done in a weekend or an afternoon per se, just to get, you know, because I think it is such a good game. But after having read it and played it through, I would love to play it through again. But to get that buy-in from the players to be like, we're going to stick with this for at least a couple of sessions, it's tricky. You know, we've had that. I've just gave the analogy of the board game, the complex board game. That at the end of it, they'll thank you for it. But having that buy-in at the beginning can be tricky. Hello, Just Jones, mate. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPGs. Hope you're well. And we're going to move over, I think, to the actual big screen so you can see the games. So this is what Good Society looks like. As you probably see it there, this is a Story Brewers role-playing game. So I'm going to read out what it says. So it says, Romance, Scandal, Manners. Welcome to Good Society, the Jane Austen role-playing game. Play out your very own regency dramas of balls, estates, passions and desires. For 2 to 5 players, including a facilitator, any number of play sessions, but the best is 3 to 8, and online play support included. Yes, sort of. I will say that all their PDF stuff is very well put together and stuff. The other things to say as well that there is a LARP version of Good Society, and there are it is featured on Dimension 20. That's one of the reasons I wanted to cover it a little bit. There is a hack of it used on Dimension 20 for a court of Fae and Flowers, which is actually I think one of the initials of roleplay. One of the expansions focuses on Fae courts, which is pretty cool. So, you can't see any of that, so I'm going to move that Chrome page out a little bit. So, Good Society is a collaborative regency RPG. Regency was the period I was thinking of, that seeks to capture the heart and the countenance of Jane Austen's work. It is a game of balls, estates, sly glances, and turns about the garden, even. At least on the surface. Underneath this is just as in Jane Austen novels, is a game of social ambition, family obligation, and breathtaking heart-stopping longing. I will say, Dungeons and Daddies, the podcast, also did a sort of Patreon-exclusive version of Good Society, which again was mixed in with some D&D stuff. It's interesting. I think people panic a little bit because of the structure and the framework that this game receives. They're like, oh, we need to have some sort of D&D in there in some way. And the same with that Dimension 20, A Court of Fae and Flowers, there's some D&D aspects in there as well. I don't think it needs it at all, but I think with the length of what the game is, I think that can put off people. And I think that's a complete misnomer, but anyway. Play the type of characters that captured your imagination in Austen books. Create your own Regency character. From a wealthy heir who falls in love with a new aloof rival, to a charming socialite bent on ruining the reputation of their rivals. Exploit your advantages, connections, and family influence to achieve your secret desire. Oh no, not the hiccups again. Oh. All whilst jealously guarding your own good name. Note that not only players in Good Society hold the power to control the story itself and change it in their favour. Take control of influential connections, create rumour and scandal, and spend tokens to orchestrate balls, carriage accidents, and even marriages. And there's some examples of some of the artwork there as well, which is great. I absolutely love it. And yeah, you can tell any Regency story you like, whether it is that sort of Bridgerton, like the Duchess, was it the Jewel of the Season or the Crown of the Season? I can't remember what it was from the Bridgerton. To staff and servants, to it's not Bridgerton Hall. It's going to absolutely kill me. I'm going to have to look it up in a second what it is. Anyway, so the book itself, which we're going to look into, is a full colour hardback book or a PDF of over 280 pages of thematic material and beautiful art. It includes all the rules you need to get started with your own Regency stories, and it comes with 35 secret desire and relationship cards to keep Good Society replayable and customizable. It also includes guidance on how you need to create your original desires and relationships. So the cards look like this. Again, what great art. Oh, there's Edwin again. Fantastic. It comes with a deck of connections. So that's what they're called. These are called connections. So these are sort of the NPCs that will help you create a vivid supporting cast of characters quickly and easily. And there you go. There's some people wrote some example stuff, and there's some ways to download extra materials here, which is fantastic. All good stuff. And a LARP version. You can even play it with 2 people. There isn't a version to play it with 2 people, or at least guidance on how to play it with 2 people. I've played it with 5 people, I think. 4 people and myself as the facilitator. So we had the full lot when we did it. So yeah, with all that out of the way, let me pop that back in there and turn this off. And here we go. Ooh. So you might see at the top that I have a lot of PDFs open, because this will be useful to go into it. So along with the PDF of the book, we've also got examples of character roles. So these are the character sheets you'll have. Some family backgrounds, which again, each one of these indicates something like you put into the backstory of your character. Public information. This is like a collaborative sheet that you'd share between everyone, so there's information that everyone knows about. cycle of play, this is one we're probably going to be referring to quite a bit because it shows you how exactly a session in Good Society works. Connection sheet, again, this is when we're creating connections, those sort of secondary characters, sorry. This is where we keep all the information on here. It's not form fillable, I'll just say that. And there's some reference sheets as well, which we might have a look at. So this is something that you'd give to the players as well, so that they know what each of their individual game mechanics does. So very good. Great, with all that out of the way, I'm going to zoom on in a little bit. And we're going to look at some Good Society. You know what? Press button here. Good Society. Jane Austen novel. Roll credits. To be fond of role-playing is a certain step towards falling in love. How great. How great is that? Yeah, and it's actually not that old. It's about 5 years old, which is fantastic. So, and I'm kind of shocked that there are lots of actual plays of Good Society out there. There's not much about the character creation. The sort of the backstory process, which takes up quite a bit of a chunk, I think, of the first session, or I think you'd maybe have to do separately to the first session, but we'll get into that on the way. Hayley Gordon and V. Hendro, those are the two folks that have been, they are sort of the Story Brewers team, so to speak. And some other folks there as well. Fantastic. And Raven Warner is the person we can thank for the art as well. And Avid is connection art. So those are the individual secondary characters that we can have as well. So fabulous. And here we go. First of all, what a cracking way to display contents, like with the images as well. I really love that. I think that's really cool. So in total, we can see here we've got 10 chapters? Yes, 10 chapters. We won't look at all of them. It's a bit hard on the eyes, isn't it? The small writing. So, we'll look at the overview, absolutely. Collaboration, that is quite important in this book, so we'll look at it as well. Then we'll look at the backstory and the rules of play, and certainly the cycles of play. We won't read everything out, obviously, but we'll have a look through. Facilitators, jobs, we don't need to look at what the facilitator does. I don't think that's necessarily useful. Playsets we'll have a quick look at, I think, about how do we use them in full. Basically, this whole book is very, very important, but I think if you're looking at it at a quick glance, what helps you decide if this is the game for you, or if this is one that you'd like to run or have to run, what are the key elements that you want to look at first. And then there are some examples of some essays about knowing Austen, like what the sort of main tropes of it, role playing, how do we keep it accurate if you want to play those sort of games. I'm not entirely sure I think characters, I think they're just these sheets, I think, just at the back with a little bit more information probably about them. Great. All right, let's zoom out, see the faceplate. And the overview. And each of these chapters, I will say, starts off with like a little letter or a little sort of introduction that is written in the style of that sort of Lady Whistledown's, that sort of like dearest friend. You know now of the secret once that captained my heart and I the desires which plague yours. In times past we would counsel each other, dismiss such passions. Our families, our obligations, and indeed our very reputations demanded it. And yet, why should we not pursue our objectives without injury? Opportunities stand ahead, afforded by us by connections, position, and wealth. We must use every tactic, every relation, and every favour to pursue our ends. Outside, the dark of winter is thawing into a glistening spring, and as the flowers bloom, so does my resolve. This year will be different. Very cool, very cool. I think the only thing I'd say, I don't know about anyone else, but the green is a little bit bright on my eyes. It is what it is. I don't think it's too bright on the actual physical cover. I think it is a little bit darker, actually. I think it's just maybe a bit small. Again, I'm an old lady now, so I'm like, I can't see anything else. Brian, hello. How are you doing? Yes, Story Brew. I was just singing Story Brewer's praises. I'm hoping it's getting to the table. Thank you. Thankful this too long I didn't read. Well, hopefully it's helpful. I was just saying at the beginning before you came in, I have run this game. It's very enjoyable, but there's a lot of structure and a lot of elements to it, and the fact that it does recommend a minimum of 3 sessions, so 3 so 3 times 4 hour sessions, you know, to get into it, to get into like one chapter, one bit of play, which we'll soon see. So I do think it's like teaching a really difficult board game to someone. People be like, oh, I don't know, can we not just play Scrabble? And then they'll be thankful for going with you at the end. So that's the only thing I say. I definitely felt when I was reading this, I was like, there's a lot to it. I don't know how much buy-in can you get from the players to begin with, but I think it's cracking. Absolutely, I love it. It's so different to any other game I've played. So, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a person in possession of a love for Jane Austen novels must be in want of a means to create such stories for themselves. In pursuit of that end, we have created Good Society, a collaborative role-playing game that captures the heart and countenance of Jane Austen's work. Good Society is a game of balls, estates, slight glances, and turns about the garden, at least on the surface. Underneath this, such as in Jane Austen's own novels, it is a game about social ambition, family obligation, and breathtaking, heart-stopping longing. Most importantly, Good Society is designed to tell the story you've always wanted to tell. It's a deeply customizable game, whilst the setting and the structure remains the same. You will sculpture the tone and content throughout play so that every game is different. In this game, you and your fellow players will work together to create your own Jane Austen novel. You will take on the role of a major character, similar to those found in Jane Austen books, from a wealthy heir who falls in love with an aloof new arrival, to a charming socialite bent on ruining the reputation of their rivals. But your influence over the story does not end with your major character. Players in Good Society hold the power to control the story itself and change it to produce more drama, romance, and scandal. Take the role of the influential connections, spread rumours, and orchestrate balls, carriage accidents, and even marriages. This book contains all the rules you'll need to play Good Society, but you'll also find helpful tips for customising your game, play sets for different themes and tones, and a wealth of information about the characters and setting of Jane Austen's works. We've provided the author's tools, but the fate of the characters and the town you create is entirely up to you and your friends. A space for at least 3 sessions, I mean. Yes, giving it that space does make sense based on the APs I've watched on the YouTube videos from Haley and V themselves. Yeah, agreed. But it's, I guess it's that sort of thing going, you can't do it as a one-shot. If somebody's not well, I'm like, oh, we'll stop, we won't do D&D today. But well, what about Good Society? That's the thing. I think you do need a little bit of planning behind it. I'd even suggest that if you had a weekend away planned, that maybe having like a morning slot and then an early evening slot to do like 2 parts of a game, that might be able to contain it all. But yes, very good. The other thing I'd say, if you were wondering like, God, what are play sets, I'm not so sure, Fiasco is a really good example of something that's like, it's not got the same framework obviously, but it's that same sort of underlying mechanics of how it works, but then you have different playsets, different settings, different whatevers to come in and sort of use that as the main sort of genre that you put things through, the sort of POV, the lens of the story you want to tell. So that's how I would compare it. If you're not so sure about this, maybe Fiasco will be a good starter one to get people into, because that definitely could be done in an afternoon or an evening. So chapter 1, which is where you find yourself now, introduces you to the main concepts and the play materials and provides an overview of how to play. Chapters 2 to 5 will explain how to play the game. Those first 2 and 3 explain the collaboration and the backstory. So the backstory is that sort of how do we create major characters and how do we create those connections as well. It's 2 steps that you complete at the beginning of every single start of a game of Good Society. Chapter 4 will explain the rules of play, and Chapter 5 will contain the structure and cycle of play. Okie dokie. Chapter 6 contains advice for the facilitator. I say it's not too bad, that chapter as well. Maybe we won't go into it too much today if we're going to just focus on the game mechanics. Chapter 7 contains the play sets that you will choose from when playing a game, and I've got a few examples here. I've got the actual cards that we can talk about as well. And then 8 to 10 describes the world of Austen's work as well as the characters that dwell within it. They provide inspiration for use in the game. Very good. Yep. Excuse me. A game of everyday Regency life. Good Society is concerned with everyday Regency life as portrayed in Jane Austen's novels. It follows the emotional struggles of characters through day-to-day events, from a quiet carriage ride to the excitement of a ball. In a world of restraint, constraints, and formalised standards of behaviour, small moments of interactions have a big impact on the characters' lives. Whilst the events of the Good Society depicts are generally commonplace, well, for the Regency that is, they form the subtle background for the jostling of status, wealth, and affection by which the game's characters measure both their hopes and fears. This is something I didn't realise as well, that the Regency period, is only 7 years long. It's set between 1811 and 1818. That's wild, right? I would actually recommend checking into the history of that, because it was just such a small blip, such a small period, but it was so influential for Austen, and then that's where she set most of her works in this period. And we still talk about it today. Like I said, we still have various adaptations of, Pride and Prejudice. I'm just trying to think of anything else now. Not Jane Austen, because that's the actual novelist. But like Wuthering Heights as well, to an extent, I'd say as well. Anyway, the historical details are only as important as your group decides. This comes in later with the collaboration stuff. You'll determine during the setup how important the historical accuracy is to your game. Oh well. Along with the particular time period, Good Society is also set in a particular place. The games occur in the fictional town of Habershire, a well-situated country locale 3 days' ride away from London. Oh, what's the other? It's called Gentleman Jack. Is the other example I would give of a TV show. Whose name I can't remember. Anne Lister. There you go. The Diaries of Anne Lister. That would also be another cool example to read into, perhaps. Sorry, where was I? 3 days. The town is small enough to ensure an acquaintance between all of its foremost inhabitants, but not so small that its gentry cannot hold a sizable ball. In location and character, it resembles the Bennet's family area of residence in Pride and Prejudice. There you go. During your game, the characters can travel elsewhere. May we suggest Bath or London as excellent holiday destinations? Like Austen, Good Society is focused on the genteel class and the rising class of professionals, merchants, and industrialists that emerge alongside it. This game is not concerned. This game is not concerned with the upper echelons of nobility, such as dukes, princes, princes and kings, nor is it concerned with the fate of the middle or working class characters. For more information on this kinds of people who populated it, go to the later chapters. Cool. Like in all tabletop role-playing games, Good Society is about getting together in a group and telling a story. This story is intended to mirror the experience of journeying through a Jane Austen novel, both in its substance and in the manner of its telling. Good Society is a highly collaborative game in which the players work together to create the drama and determine what happens. Every character, every scandal, every plot twist, and every advantageous marriage is orchestrated by your group cooperatively. Here's some examples of how it's done. So you create and play major characters as well as the most important people who surround them. So that's going to be in the backstory stuff. Pursue these characters' desires and objective and use them to complicate other characters' lives. Decide on each event and visitation we see during the story and take turns playing out the scenes that happen within them. Create the town's rumour and scandal and harness it to add drama to the story. And then finally create unexpected changes to the overall narrative and put pressure on the other players' characters. So ideally, you need 4 to 6 players. And interesting. I guess that's including the GM, perhaps. The facilitator, sorry. Who will step the players through each step of it. Once you become familiar with the game, you may choose to play without a facilitator, and you find the rules for that later on. Very good. We won't necessarily read out the examples of play unless I deem it to be useful. Ooh, sorry, I just took a picture of the flowers. Interestingly, I think at the beginning it does talk a lot about. It feels very much like those principles of the Powered by the Apocalypse stuff. Like it gives them a crossing. Like these are things to remember when we're telling collaborative storytelling. Because maybe again, this could be a game that is your first time actually creating like this level of collaborating and maybe improvisational stuff. Might be the first time you've ever come across that as a player, compared to maybe some of the other structured wings where I just play. A cog in a wheel, small cog in a big machine, and it's up to the facilitators to describe all that stuff. Whereas here, you have definitely much more impact on your surroundings and what the story is, which I think is really, really cool. So, Good Society is a game based to is a game built to foster collaborative storytelling. But what does in-game collaboration actually look like? Here's what it means to us. Free and open discussion between players, even if it would never occur between characters. This is very important because obviously there's a lot of hidden information and misconstrued communication in Jane Austen's novels. Making this overall story together rather than focusing solely on your own major character. Putting the story and fun above your own character's interest, even if you pursue those interests in character. Making sure everyone's voice is heard in shaping the novel that you are creating. Because it talks about it as if you're creating a novel, which I absolutely love. And then respecting consent between players, even when your characters clash. So whilst the characters might disagree, you, the players, should be agreeing on stuff. You should be on the same page. Bringing a collaborative attitude to your game is the best possible way to enjoy it. That's kind of like the first step, isn't it? Absolutely. So, each player will take on the role of a major character, the regency's gentry at the centre of your story. They'll also wield broad narrative power and will have more fun if they use it. As a player, it is your role to actively contribute to the story by playing the characters you control, offering ideas, and creating drama for others. Here are some principles. They're always useful. Respect the decisions made in collaboration. Take the action to pursue your character's desires and objectives. Be willing to accept or even orchestrate your character's own misfortunes to create a more interesting story. And then finally, contribute to the story and support the other players even when your character is not involved. Always be a fan of your fellow players. Yeah, obviously, it does say that with the facilitator, you should be a fan of players, but you should be a fan of what happens to your other friends' characters. Why must I suffer? In Austen's novels, characters suffer setbacks, misfortunes, and uncertainty before they can achieve their objectives. These setbacks are often what makes the stories interesting. The same principle applies to the story you're creating in Good Society. Let the bad things happen to your characters. You can reverse these fortunes later, and it will be a thing far sweeter as a result. So, in most games, one person will take on the role of facilitator. Unlike traditional role-playing games, facilitator in Good Society does not have unlimited narrative control. They do not plan how the story goes or determine the actions of all the supporting characters. Instead, the facilitator shares creative power equally with the players. They play a vital role in bringing the best out of players and making the game feel like an Austen novel. If possible, the role of facilitator is best taken by someone with a bit of role-playing experience. Oh, classic. You can still do if you've not had any role-playing experience before, but we recommend you watch the example play video on our website first. I'd say that example video is actually really good, by the way. It definitely takes you slowly through things. And then, like I said, there are other actual plays that use a hack of it. With sort of say, like I said, they mentioned 20 and Dungeons and Daddies do their own actual plays of it. But you've got to bear in mind that they infuse D&D into it, which is fine. Whatever, I don't care. I think it's completely better without it myself. We also recommend the facilitator have some familiarity with Austen's style. Oh no, you're going to have to watch lots of Jane Austen and read lots of Jane Austen. What a shame. Fortunately, in this world of excellent movie adaptations, such knowledge is easily obtainable. So here's some principles for the facilitator. Respect the decisions made in collaboration and foster a collaborative environment. Ask questions and build on the answers. Oh, very classic. Be responsible for structure and pacing. So yeah, you're the one that has to be like edit and scene and all that sort of malarkey. Play some of the supporting characters. So this is the thing. You don't have to play every single NPC as a facilitator. It goes round with the players that they may have look after somebody else's connection, and then they can roleplay them in a different scene. So it just means that you spread that narrative load on other people, but also it means that a major player, a player is not playing themselves twice in a scene, which we'll get onto in a second. Bring home the consequences of character actions. Bring home the consequences of the setting. Add drama and complication, but only if it's needed. I've often found it's definitely the players that bring it. Especially if you've got good players who are buying into the setting and buying into this game, like it might take them a little while to get going, but then they'll be like, oh, I'm going to dob this person in it, I'm going to bring this in. They're very good at bringing their own drama. They know what kind of drama their character wants to experience. So as long as you're upfront about, like, some bad things will happen to your character, they go full in on it, which is quite fun. It's quite nice that way. if you're playing this without a facilitator, then it's shared amongst players. I mean, I think it's really cool that you do not have to have a facilitator to run this game. I think it's tricky. I think it's nice to have someone who is dedicated to look after this because of the way the structure is in the game, but that's okay. It is what it is. In Good Society, the facilitator can also choose to play a major character, which we highly recommend in games of 4 or less people. However, if the facilitator is playing a major character, they still need to perform the task listed above. Their role as facilitator takes priority. So yeah, you get into those sort of tricky areas. Like, I don't think I'm very good at it myself, where you've got what is sort of termed, I think, in the community as like the DM PC. It's the player character of the DM, and I find it really difficult sometimes to shift that knowledge I have of what the game is and what the story is away from me playing as a character. It's just something I find really, really tricky. Now, I know with more experience of doing these things, and obviously it's fine, but I would rather prefer either that somebody else is the facilitator or I'm the facilitator. I feel like, because it's, like I said, if you're not getting that buy-in from people, somebody has to take control, per se. And also, RPG people are very polite in a game. Something like a game like this, and nobody wants to hurt each other, like, not intentionally, but no one wants to make a decision because they don't want to get it wrong, and they don't want to take the limelight. I say do it. Take the limelight, because then people go, oh, and then they'll jump on you as a result, in a nice way. Anyway, the flow of play. So it has a structured flow of play to make the game more like a Jane Austen novel. Every time you start a new game of Good Society, you'll begin by completing the collaboration and the backstory. During these steps, you'll decide what kind of story you'd wish to tell and create the characters that will feature within it. So there you go. So that's the 2-step sort of process for the setup. It's a setup, basically. And as we look into it in a little bit more detail, this can take a long time. I think when we did it, it was an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 3/4, just because we were going through things and we were discussing things at great length because people really enjoyed discussing stuff. I think you need to create characters separately before you play that first game. After that, your game of Good Society will take place in a series of phases arranged into a cycle of play, which we can see here. A game of Good Society will consist of 3 to 8 cycles. And each cycle will take most groups 2 to 3.5 hours to complete, making one cycle perfect for a single session. So yeah, there you go. This is basically the structure of play, which will take 3.5 hours maximum. It's going to take longer than that, you know that. It's certainly that first one when you've created the characters as well. And then 3 to 8 cycles. So 3 to 8 sessions to play through a full game. That's a lot of commitment and a lot of dedication for trying out a new RPG. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about each of the individual phases of the cycle of play. So, the one that comes up twice, well, a couple of these come up twice, but it's interesting to note. So, the novel chapter is that in-character play. So that is where most of the role-playing will take part in, is in this, in these 2 sections. So, at the first section, the first phase at the start of the game, and about over halfway. So here we pursue our secret desires, exploiting reputation, rumours and connections to secure your advantage. This will make up the bulk of the play, absolutely. I think, ideally, this should be an hour each, minimum, maximum. That's that's roughly what it is. Especially, and it's obviously, the more people you have, the more likely they want to role play and do more stuff as well. So maybe you, as a facilitator, have to move people around a little bit. But that is, the novel chapter is where most of the role playing will happen. Next, after the novel chapter, we get 2 reputation phases. So reputation is where you adjust your reputation based on the events that happened since the last reputation thing. So it usually happens, what happened in that novel chapter? Did you make a big scene at the ball? Did you fall in a lake in front of your beloved, etc.? Who will rise to a position of consequence and who will fall in disgrace? So what's interesting about this is that you will have, as your character will have, like, certain criteria that you might want to complete to get a higher reputation, but there's also societies, in various bunnies and quotation marks, standards of what it looks like as well. So having to keep in line with those things, with your own sort of criteria and with the criteria of society, which might go against what your desire is as a player. Then we have one rumour and scandal phase per cycle of play. So this is where the players come collaboratively to determine what rumours and scandals are flying around the good society, which are merely whispers and which will spread to the drawing room in town. This is a really cool phase. It's a way to give people an extra edge. It's a way to give people a little hook of a story that's been going on, especially if you, what I suggest between the novel chapters is that you move the story on. It's like the next day or the next week or something like that. It's not a continuation of what's just happened. And then a word I can never say, but I believe it's the epistolary phase, which is a letter writing phase. This is one of my favourite things, and we do it twice as well in a single cycle of play. This is really cool. So basically, it captures your inner thoughts and feelings or puts machinations into place. The final epistology phase also serves as the epilogue. We'll go into it properly. What I got my players to do is that I gave them the break, and then they, 5 minutes or whatever, and they wrote out their letters to each other and read them out. And so much fun. Dimension 20 do it quite well as well. Like you can see the cast go away into the green room and write their letters to each other, which is super, super cute. Then you have the upkeep at the end. And all that is just like perform the upkeep, check that everything, the actions have been expended, checking on the character conflicts, desires, basically make sure everything is okay, like admin stuff before you go into the next cycle of play. We recommend you use a cycle of play character sheet included with the PDF ones, which is here, which goes into a lot more detail about it. Ooh, can I move in a little bit? Oh, it's taking a little while to load because there's so much information on it. Oh no, oh stop it. Maybe move out a little bit, but there you go. So that's the sort of cycle it goes into every single play. And there's some things as well, like if 3 cycles or less, that's when it's a one shot, so to speak, or longer than 3 cycles, which is, it gives you some information here as well. So where's the melee step? Hello, Crafty Gobbo. Hello, how are you? Unfortunately, I don't think there's a melee step unless you're going to do a duel, but I think it's all part of the narrative bit. So, but nice to see you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're ready for some Jane Austen bullshit coming your way. So, we've already talked about it. So, the players will take on the role, of a major character, along with their desires, secrets, and problems. They are the center focus of gameplay. These characters are the regency individuals that most captivate our attention, whether they are protagonists like Elizabeth Bennet, or scheming antagonists such as George Wickham, boo, or Elizabeth Thorpe. A major character in a good society is created from 4 components: their desire, a relationship, a character role, and family background. Each of these has an ability to shape the major character and the narrative itself in a dramatic way. So, this is where I'm going to get out some of my cards so we can see for some examples of it as well. Okay, so the first thing is desires. This is like a burning hope or passion that the major character wishes to accomplish. At its simplest, it is a clear internal statement of what the major character wants in the medium to long term. Players have an obligation to act on their desires, pursuing schemes and machinations and plans to make it come to pass. These actions will help move the story forward. So yeah, it's a personal agenda, essentially. This initial desire determines what is most important to them as the game begins. This desire is the first element your character will encounter and will play a significant role in shaping who they might be. Whilst the initial desires are essential in driving the drama, desires will also shift over time as the characters change and develop. If a player decides that their desire is accomplished, or impossible to achieve, or is no longer interesting to explore, they can create or select a new one during that upkeep phase. So again, go back to that top, right at the end of a thing. So it's quite nice, so that means that you can always check in and update. You go, actually, I don't want to pursue wealth anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to change something else. That's always good that you have, you can do it at a certain point. There's a dedicated section for it, which I think is really good. Okay, next up. And here's an example of what desire card is. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see. So it talks about it, like what kind of card it is, what it is in sort of like a quick description of it, and then it sort of summarizes it and gives some backstory, etc., and public knowledge as well. This is anything like this, when it says public knowledge, it goes onto the public information sheet here as well. But it's going to tell us on the next page, I'm pretty sure of it. But I wonder if I can find that particular one so I can read it out as we go. So that's number 13? 13. Unlucky for some, isn't it? Oh, good afternoon. I was going to say Krabby Gobbo. No, Crafty Gobbo. So yes, I've got the cards here as well, so we can look at it whilst we move on to the next page. So the number. This is also quite useful as well, the numbers on the cards, because certain play sets, as we'll say, some of the set play sets will be like, for this character background, you need desire card number 2, you need relationship card number 5, etc. So it's already preset some of the stuff, which is really useful, as we'll go into in a second. But we'll just go into the actual description of what it says. Each card has an Austen quote on the back, so they're in the middle there, to give the players of the idea of its contents without revealing too much. In games with hidden information, they can use these quotes to help select which desires they would like to pursue. Multiple desires share the same quote to avoid their contents becoming too easily revealed to seasoned players. Cool. And then on the back, it says it in one line, what your desire is. So for example, that number 13 one is get your inheritance back. And then a description, so underneath will be a little sort of bio saying that the circumstances surrounding your desire. Let me zoom in a little bit, so there's a little teeny tiny writing for us people with glasses, huh? So for this one, the desire to get your inheritance back, it says 3 years ago you did something that shocked your family so much they disinherited you and disowned you. Now you're back, ostentatiously to make amends, but to really claim what's rightfully yours. But how will you make mummy and daddy love you again? And then you've got extra instructions, so additional setup instructions to be performed at the end of the major character interface. So this is a little bit of information that you would tell the players, like, is there anything that says on it that you would need to create? So it says here, create and spread a rumour about what you did. Start with 1 extra negative reputation tag and 1 extra resolve tag. So yes, again, what comes into this game is this idea of tags to help you gain advantages and disadvantages and stuff, or being sort of compelled against you to get tokens. And yes, those resolve tokens, we'll go into them in a second as well. And then public knowledge, information that's known by all of society about your character or the circumstances. You must share any public knowledge on your card with all the players. So here on this card it says you were disinherited, so everyone knows that in the society, it's not a secret. Some cards contain mandatory connections. If you have a desire which details a mandatory connection, you must create them as one of your connections during the backstory. So it's just something to be. So it says here at the bottom, if you do not have a parent relationship card, create one as a mandatory connection. So one of your connections would be a parent's per se. And then there are two types of desire cards, basic and complex. So this one that we were looking at as the example, this is a basic one. Basic desires are great for first-time players or faster setup. They may also suit players in longer games who want less specificity in their initial desires and relationship, allowing for greater freedom and control over their character. Complex desires have more aspects in their setup and generally require a lot more discussion between players during the backstory. These desires are great for those comfortable with collaborative storytelling and who have played a few games and would like to explore more nuanced scenarios. Excuse me. They work best with those open to shaping their character around their desire. Complex desire often create conflict from the outset, perfect for shorter games packed for drama. So I'm having a quick look here to see if there's an example. Here's a example number 8, desire of a complex one, and the quote says, what is right to be done cannot be done too soon. So this one, it says, restore your family name and resume your place in society. 10 years ago, a huge scandal erupted that sent ripples of shame and outrage through the local society. Your families were the one to blame. They fled the area, leaving the ancestral home empty. Now you're back to restore your family's reputation and resume the place at the forefront of local society. The only problem is not everyone here is happy about it. The public knowledge that you must reveal is that the scandal, what the scandal your family caused, okay. And then the sort of extra bit at the bottom is create and spread 2 negative rumours about your family and the scandal they caused. So there you go. So that's an example of a complex one as well. That sounds really fun, actually. If that's the most complex it will be, perfect. Oh, relationship cards! Hooray! Was it number 25? We'll get that one out. So this is the second one. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, do I not have 24? There's 25. Cool. So relationship, so this is what they kind of look like. You can see there's two sides to it, the public side, which everyone will see, and then the private side, which only you and the other major characters that you sort of swap with can understand. And it's a bit like this bit with the relationships, it's a little bit like the fiasco. You work together with the other player to sort of discuss what that means. So let's see what it says. Relationships. Each desire card has one or more corresponding relationship cards, which may change depending on which playset you are using. Relationship cards detail relationships that exist before play begins, so again, creating that backstory, keep getting those connections going. Players will take relationship cards from each other, establishing bonds between their characters. So at the top, we've got the number, so this one we're looking at as an example is number 25. And then 2 and 3 is the public and private side, so there's two different bits of information on it. The front side is the public side. This side contains the information widely known in society about the relationship between you and your other friend. The second is the private side. This side contains information about the relationship only known by certain characters. Sometimes it may be the same as the public side. Other times there are secrets or scandals to hide, and the two sides may be very different. And then it tells you what it says. Friend, the relationship, it says what it is on each. The relationship that exists between the giver and the taker of the card. And the giver and the taker. What does that look like on this side? Sorry, just checking. It says it there. So yes, it has a little bit of information there. Interesting. So yeah, so the relationship that exists. So that is on the that sort of in bold at the top there. And the giver and taker. Relationship cards contain the terminology giver and taker, so you can tell who is who in the relationship. The giver is the person who picked up the relationship card originally with their desire card, and the taker refers to the person who has taken the card from the giver during backstory. There you go. So here on the public side of it, it says the relationship is friends. The giver and taker of this card are long-standing acquaintances. They still visit on rare occasion. But, sneaky, on the private side, a relationship is actually old flame. The giver and taker of this card are old flames. They had a romance once, and whilst the raging fires of their feelings has quietened, the spark never truly dies. There you go. How cool is that? As an example of that, cool. Character role. Okay, putting these down for a second. While a proper lady or gentleman has many characteristics, society reduces them to but one. The character's role is defined by who they are, which connections they have to call on, and what consequences their reputation have on their circumstances. Only one of each character role can appear in the game at any one time. In a community as constantly watchful, gossiping, and judgmental as that of Habishire, each person is defined both by who they are and who they're not. There is but one socialite, and one dowager, and one heir of note, and all society is talking about them. So this is the character sheet, basically what you look at. We'll go over to the character sheet now so we can see, here's some example ones. So here at the top, it tells you, kind of gives you a summary of what this is the name of the character here, the character role, so that's the heir. A little bit of examples there. You can give the name, age, what they look like, a temperament, etc. It's going to talk about the connection stuff, we'll go into those, etc. But you pick one of these up that would go with that desire and would go with that relationship as well. And you can see they change quite a bit. There's a socialite there. I like how here it talks. Not only do you get the player's information, perhaps. Principles. Sorry, but also gives you an example of what a dowager is if you're not sure what one means. And here, in very tiny letters, but I will zoom in a little bit so people can see it. This is where you'd put those desires and givers and takers, like whose relationship you've given. Which relationship you've given to someone and which one you've taken from someone. Because you could take somebody else's, or somebody different per se. So that's quite cool as well. So another sleep through. The dependent as well. The new arrival. Ooh. The meddler. Yes, be Emma. Yes, my favourite. You'll notice at the top here there's little circles called RT and MT. This is resolve tokens and this is monologue tokens, and we'll get into that in a second when we get into the main mechanics. The cornerstone. The hedonist. The tutor, and then the final one, which I'll say, I think this is the foreigner. Oh, it's not, it's the curious. Well, that's very embarrassing. There's definitely one, maybe it's changed a little bit. There's one, I think maybe it was the new arrival. I think it must be the new arrival. It used to be the foreigner was the terminology for it. And don't like it. It's to be like somebody from outside of the community concern, but it's not nice. It's not nice for it because it's a bit negative connotations of that. So, but shows what I know. It's completely different to what I thought. Yeah, and here's some examples. I've kind of just sort of said it a little bit. There's the role basics, some role attributes, which are typical hallmarks in the characters in the fiction. Inner conflict. This is an interesting one. I've not actually played with this in an RPG, especially when it's quite a short. The shorter it is, you don't tend to play with it, but it's interesting. So an inner conflict is a major character's inner conflict is the internal struggle which they face within themselves. They may be torn between love and duty, or their need for acceptance and desire for revenge. At the end of every cycle, the players reflect on their character's behaviour and mark off whether they have taken action on one side of the conflict or on the other. So we'll come back to it properly when we talk about it here. Also, look, it looks like we can click to it, so that's pretty fun. Reputation, we'll come into this as well. Society is always watching and always judging. As it does, your character's reputation will rise and fall. A major character's reputation is represented by adjectives called reputation tags, which describes how society views them. If their reputation rises, the characters will earn positive reputation tags such as caring or dutiful. If it falls, they will earn negative reputation tags such as dishonest or petty. So those tags, a little bit similar to that City of Mist game we had a look at a little while ago. A little bit, not too much. If a major character accumulates several tags of the same type, so I think it's like 3 positive or 3 negative, you will trigger one of the reputation conditions on the character sheet roll. So let's have a quick example here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so people can see. So if we're looking at the new arrival, so let's have a read here. So the character roll is that wherever it is you were in these past years, it was nothing like here. These people are strange to you. Their habits, manners, and views are as if lifted from a theatre play. Still, to the outsider comes the gift of objective observation. You view their dramas as a spectator and be able to see what the new characters cannot. It is a skill you will need if you are to prove your own ambitions among them. And you've got some examples of connections. Again, we'll go into that in a second. Let's look at reputation. So these are the conditions. So if you gain 3 positive ones, here's a condition that you might trigger is like an unexpected connection. A famous, wealthy, or aristocratic connection that you've made abroad arrives in town. Create them as a connection, and whilst this condition is active, you remain their favourite. Whereas you could go to, if you get 3 negative ones, this might trigger. You get to pick which one you trigger, by the way. Great offence. Your actions are offensive to someone of local importance, and they mean to make it known publicly. So there you go. Interesting. Family background. So it's these things here. So there you go. Some reputation criteria as well. This adds on to it. More important than who one is in the Regency society is the family one comes from. Every major character has a family background, ranging from peerage to humble origins. A character's family background determines their starting reputation and provides with the reputation criteria unique to their heritage. Multiple characters can have the same family background. There are, after all, old money everywhere, and new money these days appears to be worryingly common. I don't think that's how you pronounce that word at all. When 2 characters are the part of the same immediate family, for example, siblings or parents, etc., they will usually share the same background. Yeah. However, this need not be so. When characters are related, their players should discuss whether they would like to share a background or create a narrative one. Yes. So this is the example one. So yeah, it's basically... I wish they'd cut these properly, but I guess for printing purposes, it's different. But yes, so you can see some examples. So we've got old money, peerage, new money... there you go, foreign, that's it. So foreign is the family background. I wish it was a different word. Ill-reputed, humble origins, clergy, and military. So those are the examples you get in the first instance of the Good Society core book. So yeah, so the name of the background and its description, the initial reputation. So these are the starting positive and negative tags that people can choose from. They're unique to each family background and are selected during the major character creation. And then reputation criteria. The criteria that determines whether a major character's reputation rises or falls. This will be assessed in the reputation phase. So let's have a quick look. So let's look at the old money one. We'll move in a little bit. Ooh, wrong one. Old money. There you go. It's that first one there. Let's have a quick look-see. So, old money. Since... Oh, God, that is tiny writing, isn't it? Ooh. Since your distant ancestor hired his first historian, history is told of your family's superiority in station and economy. On occasion, you pay a visit to the family vault and imagine your progenitors admiring the same golden trinkets as you now cradle in your hands. So the initial reputation, so again in character creation, you select one of each at the beginning of the game. Write your choices on the public information sheet. So all your tags go on here so that everyone can see them. And this is important later in the game mechanics. So you'd put your name here and you'd write all the positive ones on this side and the negative ones on this side. So the arrow indicating up meaning positive, the ones on the right meaning negative pointing down. Cool. Yes, major characters' names. Yeah, sorry, I was just reading through it. Let's have a look. See, there you go. So here, a positive tag that you might have for old money is well-connected, dependable, caring. Negative one could be old-fashioned, miserly, self-obsessed. And then here's the reputation criteria. So when we get to those reputation stages, you need to think about since the last reputation phase. Have you acted in the service of duty or morality in a way that compromised your desires? Acted in obedience to society's conventions despite considerable hardship doing so? Denied your desires or made a sacrifice to uphold the family name? So if you did any of those, you gain a positive tag. You gain a negative one if you've acted in contravention of society's conventions. What? Acted on a desire in a way that compromised your duty or morality, shamed or embarrassed the family name. So if we look over at this one, some of these are, it's like the first two are always similar, because that is the society, everyone is judged by the society, and then the third one is always different to, is unique to those family backgrounds. So here for what's this one, is this peerage. So a positive one here, made a sacrifice or denied your desires to uphold the superiority of your rank. Whoop. And the negative one, you allowed others of a lesser rank to talk down to you or treat you as an inferior. So there you go. So yeah, just a few examples there. Again, we'll get into a little bit more detail about how this all integrates together. Because, like you said, right now we've got one big character sheet, the character role, then you've got this, then you've got a desire card, then you've got a relationship card. That's 4 different things that feels very superfluous until you do the actual playthrough of here's how we create backstory. Other game concepts as well. Resolve tokens, they allow you to change the narrative details about your world and twist the events in your character's favour. They are named for and reflect a character's determination to pursue their goals. They give you the power to shape the story in a number of influential ways. They can be used to compel other characters to act, create walls, carriage rides and convenient distractions, and to find out delicious pieces of gossip or scandal. You also have monologue tokens. These are a highly entertaining feature of Jane Austen's work, and also appear in Good Society. Each player receives a monologue token at the start of each cycle. You may play your monologue token on another player at any time. You can't play it on yourself. And you can play them on multiple, by the way, as well. When you do so, the other player must reveal immediately their major characters in a monologue, disclosing their thoughts and feelings and plans. And connection cards. This is the main bit. I'd say we've got the 4 elements of how to make a major characters. We've got some game concepts which come into how you run these characters, and then we talk about connection cards. These are really, really cool. Let me see if I can find Hilda. That's 57. She's quite at the back, I think. There's some absolutely cracking images here. Oh, they're all out of order. That's so bad of me, isn't it? Hilda, there you go, Hilda, I got you. I got her, she's here. So yeah, what's really cool about this is that the connections, so just like with the desire cards, each side of the connection card is slightly different. And it gives, when you draw these connection cards to create those secondary characters for other people, it means that you won't get the same, you'll be like, oh, Hilda is that rich, important, confident person. You could have the opposite being she's widowed instead, and then give some information about who that character is and how to inform to play them. So I really like that. It gives you a little bit of option, a bit of customization in creating these secondary characters. Anyway, I have it here, so we can go on to discussing it. So connections are supporting characters that hold tremendous influence over the lives and situations or hearts of the major characters they're attached to. The characters may love or hate their connections, but their influence cannot be denied. Each major character has a list on their character role sheet of the connections they are likely to be influenced in their lives. You'll be able to pick from these options when creating connections during backstory. For suggested connections for each role, see Chapter 9. Yes. The connections in Good Society are represented by cards from the deck of connections. This deck is comprised of connection cards that allow players to quickly and easily create characters with a unique appearance, and vivid personality. Each connection card has two sides, which showcase two different aspects of the character pictured. The players can pick either side, the side of their choosing during the connection phase. So yeah, you've got the number at the top. Again, maybe you just a way to keep track of numbers, but I think as well, you'd like, I'll playset use these folks as well. The character's first name. Surnames are not included, so you can create family connections as needed. A beautiful art portrait on each side. The character tags which describe the most important attributes of the character. They may describe a character's personality, wealth, or station in life. So yes, as we said, on side A, here's rich, important, confident, and on side B, it's rich, influential, widowed. And then a character description at the bottom, which demonstrates temperament, ambitions, and all circumstances. The player controlling this character can use the description as an inspiration for their personality and actions. And there are ways, I will say this, there are ways to create these things without having decks and stuff like that. There's alternate rules for stuff. I will say though, it was very easy, really easy when we use this, one of the cards as well. Cool. So those are the cards. This is the public information sheet. So this is, I was talking about this before, this is where all those information, all the stuff about the collaboration decisions, we can see there. The major information about the characters, everyone can see this at a glance. I will say it's very tiny. Even looking at this page, it's really, really small. So I think I would actually print out this public information sheet on an A3, maybe even I don't know if A2 is too much of a thing, but like if you're in person and you sat around the table, I think you would absolutely make it big enough for people to see at a glance. Obviously online, that is very easy to create this online, I think, but there isn't much of it online. I don't think there's form fillable versions of it online, but I'd be happy for it to be corrected otherwise. Here's what it, that's not what it looks like. Where's it gone? Public information sheet there. This is what it looks like at a glance. So not only on it do we have this collaboration about what you decide in it, we have those positive tags and negative tags as well, people can see. You've also got the inner conflicts that you've put up here as well, so that people can see what your character is doing at a glance. So almost like those personality bonds, ideals, flaws, that sort of thing. And then rumour and scandal on this side, which is very interesting. Again, I'm sure we'll go into a conversation about that as well. But yeah, this needs to be much bigger. Print it out on a huge, big piece of paper, I think. We won't go too much into this because, again, we'll discuss the rumour and scandal. I think that's going to come next, I think. She says, hoping. No, it doesn't. Well, I'll talk about it quickly here, but it will go into it when we talk about it. So we talked about reputation tags. So rumour and scandal, so that's the thing on that right hand side. So record the rumours generated by the players during the rumour and scandal phase. That's roughly, we go from novel chapter, we go, not upkeep, reputation, rumour and scandal, epistology, writing phase, and then all over again. There's only one rumour and scandal phase per cycle. So first of all, you spread a rumour. When a rumour is spread, mark the circle next to it. This indicates that a resolve token is now attached to that rumour. It can be used that the rumour had to affect the story. Once a resolve token has been used, the rumour is crossed off. So here, that's what it's talking about here. So if you wrote down, say, Lord Whimsy is in a lot of debt, and then somebody was like, oh, I like that rumour, I'm going to spread it. That's when a resolve token comes into it. Fading rumours. If a rumour has not been spread at the end of the rumour and scandal phase, it begins to fade out. These rumours are marked with the fade out symbol. If they're not spread by the end of the next rumour and scandal phase, they will be crossed out. So there you go. Again, it all seems very superfluous just now, but again, it's nice to know what these concepts are before we dig right into it. So, before we start the game, you and your group need to make a number of choices. If you're planning to facilitate the game, you need to make these choices ahead of time. Your decision will affect how the game is set up and some of the rules you'll be doing. Decide the following. How many major characters will appear in your game? So, how many players, essentially? Will your game have a facilitator? Are you going to run it, or are you going to be a player as well? Approximately how many cycles will your game consist of? It's so tricky. It's so tricky. You can play, it says there, an introductory game of 1 to 2 cycles. If you're playing a game of 3 cycles or less, you'll need to use the rule adjustments outlined on page 28. It's going to be in a second. And I know what it's going to say. It says ignore the inner conflict wings. That's what it kind of says. Everything else, and use playsets in full. Which playset will you use to set up the game, and will you use it in part or in full? So those playsets are basically those combinations of roles, backgrounds, desires, and relationships that are tailored to a certain theme or tone. So whilst I sort of picked those ones out at random using those examples, if you put them together in a certain combinations, you would get, oh, this is a farcical tone, or this is going to be a playset that's going to focus on wealth or marriage, perhaps, which is quite cool because that, maybe that's the story you want to tell. Once you've chosen your playset, you'll need to decide whether your group will use it in part or full. Most of the time, we'll recommend you use the playset in part. However, with games of 2 to less cycles, you should use it in full. What's the difference, right? Because I was like, what's the difference between this? But actually, it's kind of useful because when you use it in part, you get the desires and relationships, but then you have a bit more control about what kind of role or family backgrounds you want to play. So maybe it just means that you can design your character from those relationship and the desire cards that you get given, right? And so so the desire and the corresponding relationship, you always get those during the backstory. That comes from the playset. And they recommend doing that sort of a partial playset for longer games because it's gonna. The reason is it allows the players to be more flexible when creating characters, and it reflects while still reflecting that playset's theme or tone, which I think is fair. However, if you like me don't have time, and certainly if people struggle to, if they're trying to get that buy-in, like we were talking about before, use the playset in full. So that has not only the set of desires and relationships, but also it comes with character roles and family backgrounds which are meant for the setting. So they're already it's a pre-gen, essentially. So all you have to do then is ask the players which set that interests them the most, and it's used. And it's suggested for like one-shots, less than 2 cycles, etc. I think you can. I honestly, I say this every time I do RPGs like this. I'm very fond of getting a pre-gen and just running with it. I have no problem. I don't have time to make characters off the top of my head and stuff because I think sometimes it gets to a point where I actually don't have that many ideas anymore, and it's actually a lot of energy and effort to do that constantly for every single game. So using a playset in full actually really helps me hone in on what I like to play and be like, oh, I've given this as a challenge as a character I really, really like to play. Maybe it's a character that is completely unlike what I would be expected to play in this, and I really love that sort of thing. If none of the existing playsets can appeal to it, you could also create your own. You could, if you've got the time. Here are the rule adjustments. So this is what we use for the Christine's Brains Good Society game. So the number of connections is limited, so those number of, again, we'll come into that, but like when you create those secondary characters, it's limited to how many you can create. The inner conflict is not used. Instead, everyone gets a resolve token in the upkeep phase. Expanded backstory is not used. Desires cannot be changed in the upkeep phase. Rumours don't fade out during the rumour and scandal phase. So again, it just makes it a little bit more compact as a game. No problem with that. Then there's some rule adjustments for without a facilitator. We're not going to look at that too much. Alright. All that out of the way. Locking off for now, but really enjoying this, and we'll catch the rest of it later. Thanks as always for this series to help me better understand different RPGs. Oh, thank you, Brian. Well, have a wonderful day. I appreciate you being here. So this is where people go, oh goodness, what is this? So you got the character roles, you've got the family sheets, you've got the connection sheets, which is just literally a piece that it's a way to write up a character and connection quickly. Public information sheet, the cycle of play sheet. You'll also need desire cards, relationship cards, a deck of connections, tokens, and so there's a lot of stuff that goes with this game, and it's difficult. It's really difficult to get once you've got all this stuff. I mean, I don't know. Some people are like, "Oh, you've got all the stuff, great, that's fantastic," but I don't know. It feels a lot of buy-in and a little bit itty bitty, a little bit, I think as well. So if there was a way to make, I don't know, a character sheet, quickly customize it, whether it's like an online generator and you could just print it all out, or having an online character form. So yeah, here you go. So use this virtual space if you're playing online. We generally make use of a Google document. Yeah, all the usuals essentially. Collaboration. All right, so we're going to start at that first bit when you're setting up a game. This is called collaboration. We talked a bit about it. It comes up quite often in games I actually look at on this channel. So like the Die the RPG also has a very similar bit at the beginning where you're collaborating together to making that persona collaboration stuff. So it just makes it makes that sort of important decisions at the top of the session. What the big ultimate rules are going to define what the game is and like what everyone's going to feel comfortable with. Those are the highest ones that we just do not touch. We just set them at the beginning of it. And all players, as I said, should have a chance to contribute to this process, so everyone has a say in shaping the story ahead. Fantastic. Note down what Austen means to your group. I think this is actually quite a nice one. Like, what does Austen mean to people? Because some people might not have seen a period drama. I still can't think of what the it's not Bridgewater Hall. What's it called? There's whatever it is on ITV that is the period drama that everyone loves. I can't remember it. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, like if people have seen like media, if they've read books and stuff, this is where you discuss it and have, this is where you sort of set the tone of what what people's knowledges are of such a genre, right? What do they expect to happen in the game? What do they want to see and do? And after the discussion, everyone should answer the question on the next couple of pages together. Read them options out loud so that players understand, and call for a vote, etc. In collaboration. Yes, all good stuff. All good stuff. Downton Abbey. Thank you. I have been kicking myself for like the last 20 minutes trying to work out what that is. Downton Abbey. I have not actually watched Downton Abbey at all, but it's so popular and it will be perfect for getting inspiration for this. Like for me, I'm much more of a fan of Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte and stuff, but Downton Abbey, like that has been at the forefront for the last 10 years or so. Thank you so much, Crafty Gobbo. I owe you at least an iota of gratitude. Oh gosh, I'm just like going like I've never seen it. So, first question is, what kind of tone should our story have? So here it gives 3 examples, and as always, they either underline the sort of default one. So is it a drama? Are things more difficult and actions have serious consequences? Is society harsh and judgmental? Is it a romantic comedy where actions have consequences but past misdemeanors can be recovered from? Is society quick to judge but also quick to forget? Or is it a complete farce if you want to go for like an Oscar Wilde type, Lady Windermere's fan, or The Importance of Being Earnest? That is also, that sort of vibe at least. That is also worth it. So good to have. I will say, no matter if you want to do drama or romantic comedy, always ends up being a farce. How important is historical accuracy? This is such a good question, right? Because, like I said, I could even remember the TV show Downton Abbey just now, right? So, how important is it that we get it right? So is it a little bit important? Is it somewhat important that we get it right, but we never stop the game to find out a historical fact? Like, even as we said earlier, that it is a 7-year period from 1811 to 1818. Like, you won't know the ins and outs of all that per se, but here it's like very important. Maybe you are huge Regency fans or huge Jane Austen fans, so we're calling the expertise of the players to help us get it right. We'll avoid stopping the game, but we can look things up during breaks in between sessions. I mean, I don't have a problem with that personally, but as long as you have that in that collaboration stage, that the setting up, saying like what's important or not, I think somewhat important gets it roughly right. Those people who've watched a couple of adaptations of Jane Austen's works and stuff, I think that's pretty much hits up the nail on the nose. Hits the nail on the head, not the nail on the nose. Oh dear, it's the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend. Now this is another really good question. It's like, how do we treat the gender power balance? The answer to this question need not change anything aesthetic about the world unless you'd expressly like it to. Unless agreed upon otherwise, men will still wear the literal pants, but if not the figurative ones. But it's worth taking a moment to check in what your group prefers. So this is really interesting because obviously traditional Regency standards and books before Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte came in, it is men are in charge. People of color don't necessarily exist in societies like this, or don't have much of a say in it. So I think this is really important to have these discussions because, like it says, historical standards, the regency, patriarchy, or is it off? Is it acceptable for people of all genders to have significant and respectable careers, making the first move, inherit entailed estates, having marital relationships of all genders? Or is it completely reversed, that only women or femme-presenting folks could have these things? I think that's a great question to ask, and I actually would love to play in a Austen game, a Good Society game where things are off or in reverse. When we had this conversation at the Christian Brained one. It was interesting because obviously the two male presenting players were like, well, we don't want to have much of a say in this because we want to make sure that you folks are comfortable. But weirdly, well, not weirdly, but the female presenting players were like, well, it's Jane Austen. We don't mind it so much. But it was nice to have that conversation as well. It just makes it a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more aware that some of the issues that get brought up in these sort of stories, we should invite other people to take part in them, so to speak. So there you go. So what about race? Gender is a central theme to Jane Austen's works, so it's important to discuss your group's approach to the gender power balance. Race is not. Jane Austen's work is not about race, and it doesn't grapple with racial prejudice. For this reason, we take the approach that in the world of Good Society, racial prejudice does not exist, and the characters may be of whatever race they choose without incident. Great. Put that put that at the front of the book, please. How much hidden information will be used in the game? So this will determine if any game information will be hidden from the players. Most characters in the fiction will not be privy to the desires or private relationships, no matter what option you select. So the default option is none, so that the desires and private relationships will be public player knowledge. Of course, they will remain secrets to the characters in the fiction. So again, if you want to collaborate a bit more, perhaps, and just be more open about like what you've got, and maybe you're not sure about something, then that would be perfect for it. But if you want to have some private stuff, so private relationships will be public player knowledge, but the desires will remain hidden from the other players at the table. I think that's quite fun. I do think that's quite fun. And then it goes into, is there anything that we should avoid? Is there anything we should include? Talking about the X card, of course, those safety tools is absolutely fabulous and very important for games like this as well. Cool. All right. So that is like that first step is of the collaboration, which is brilliant. And then we're going to go on to the backstory. How are we doing for time? Oh gosh, almost an hour and 20 minutes in. Fantastic. So backstory has two parts. The first part, we're going to develop the major characters, so the characters that you're definitely going to be playing the majority of the scenes in. And then in the second, you create those connections, those supporting characters that play a vital role as well. So technically, each player will have two sort of characters that they will play. We'll go into more in a second. So it's a group activity, requires all players to work together, and it's done best when everyone is present and in a context where they can engage full and open conversation. So I think you need to do this session 0 before you even start playing. Like trying to fit this in and then play a cycle is really difficult to do. And again, there you go, so an hour and a half, especially if there's 5 major characters. If you're running a shorter game of 1 or 2 cycles, you can reduce this time by playing the playset in full. I mean, we did do that, and it didn't reduce it at all. Cool. So, here is sort of the 6 steps. So we've chosen the playset, we choose the desires that have been set out for us, we form those relationships, choose the roles and backgrounds, flesh out the major characters, and then we do some introductions. So the most important, so if you're playing in full, the desires, relationships, roles and backgrounds, they'll all be connected. And so it's just a bit like, look at the desire, which one do you want to play, and then you get all the stuff with it as well, which is really, really cool. I really like that. Players choose their desires, then forming relationships, then choosing their character role, and then background. So if you're using it partially using a playset, then you only get the desire and the relationships, and then you can choose the final 2 there as more customizable. So all good stuff. What if I know exactly what I want to be? No, you don't. No one ever does. It's best not to enter the game with too many restrictions on who your character might be. However, there may be one element of a Jane Austen character that really captures your imagination and can absolutely clue that in the game. You may, for instance, want your major character to be a captain in the military, or perhaps you'd like them to be secretly engaged. If there's a particular type of character or situation you'd like to explore the game, let your facilitator know ahead of time. Put that in bold. Then they can choose and create a playset which is compatible with that ideas. However, we recommend you keep an open mind to it. Yeah, I agree. Keep the open mind for the character stuff because it's more fun that way. So yeah, here we go. So set up your playset. So you pair the desire cards with their corresponding relationship cards. If you've got some hidden information, place the desire cards with the quote face side up, so that public side up, and don't let players look at the secret side, which is quite fun. If you're using the playset in full, lay out the desire cards, relationship cards, character roles, and family sheets as in the sets indicated. However, tell the players not to flip up the character role sheets just yet. This will be done in part 5, step 5 even. Yep, I've said all this before. Once the players finalised, they should reveal. Yeah, so once you've picked a desire and you're like, yes, I'm happy with this, they should reveal any information on the desire card that is public knowledge. Very good. Form relationships card. So now everyone at your table will have like a relationship card, and it's used to form a relationship with 2 other characters. At the end of the stage, each player must have taken and given exactly 1 relationship card unless their desire card says otherwise. Each player places their relationship card in the table in front of them, or reads it out perhaps with the private face side up for all to see if that is the case. And then the players can discuss with each other what the relationship might be appropriate for that character. If you're playing with hidden information, you can also, the facilitator can also help there, and that's quite cool. Again, it's that sort of like fiasco type thing where you're sort of going around and talking to people about, oh yes, I think this would work for us, etc. Relationships may not always work out perfectly on the first attempt, so don't be afraid to swap them around during this step as needed. Players should establish information about their character as required during the step. For example, for our relationship to work, you would have to have no children. Or do you think maybe our mother just died and left you all the inheritance? Once each player has at least 1 relationship card, go around the circle with each player stating what their relationship, who it is with, and how it appears in public. Cool. Step 2. Big thing here. Make sure 2 players aren't just swapping 2 cards. Make sure everyone else has a relationship with each other, so to speak, which makes total sense. Step 4, again, if you're playing it in full, this will all be decided for you, but now you should select a character role and family background that they feel is sort of works well with that relationship and the desire that you got as well. There can only be, as you might remember, 1 character role in the game, but the family backgrounds can maybe be selected multiple times, which is quite good. And then you flesh them out a little bit, and here's a quick summary down the side here, which I'll read through. So complete the character role sheet, so that is here. Ooh. Moving it across, so like name, appearance, temperament, etc. Choose the starting reputation tags and write them on the public character sheet. So say that's going to be with the family stuff, right? So say we were going for old money. I wanted to put sensible. I wanted to put old-fashioned. We'd go here, put the name of my character here, and put sensible on one of the positive ones, and then on the negative ones, old-fashioned there. Consider your character's personality, past and position. Determine the meaning of your relationship, share any public knowledge, and then perform any additional instructions on your desire card. And then, of course, confirm your character's pronouns. Very good. All good stuff. Again, very simple, straightforward. I think, again, I would always encourage the players to write down a lot more notes and stuff like this, perhaps in this phase, just to help them later on. It's not a test, it's not a memory, it's just helpful to get those things through. Is there anything I've missed on this one? So, yeah, whilst doing this, players should think about what their personality is, what kind of family did they come from, do they have a profession, are they married, are they unmarried, are they secretly engaged, need to determine the meaning on the events of their relationship, which is always quite good to have. Again, like that sort of, again, try not to focus too much on that. There's all stuff that's happened in the past, and people constantly refer to the past, and you're like, we're here in the now and present, don't worry about that. Double check all the public knowledge stuff. Yes. Any additional instructions? So we had that before, where it's saying like add a different connection or add another reputation tag and gain a resolve token, all those sort of things. And then confirm character pronouns. And then do introductions. Introduce people. That's really good. We recommend writing the name, title, and age of the character on a piece of paper stand that stands as a reference. It's interesting. I would say, it's about to say it here, isn't it? The character age stuff. It's fascinating that people in RPGs will play younger characters. Like, I'm 18, I'm just starting out, etc. And certainly in games like the regency ones, you don't tend not to play older characters, because obviously if it's usually about marriage and stuff, it's like, oh, well, you're 21, you're on the shelf. The only game I know that deliberately sort of targets like an older character range is Brindlewood Bay, when you're playing elderly women, retired women solving crimes, the Jessica Fletchers, so to speak. So I would love to run a game of this, of Good Society, where all the characters were older, whether they're dowagers, whether they're, or slightly older, just to see what that means and what that tells on the story. But obviously play that with sensitivity and conscientiously, is that the word I'm thinking of? Definitely sensitively. You don't want to be like, oh, I miss my young sons, because that is a terrible, terrible thing to do. We're all getting older, So the presence of generational gaps between major characters has the capacity to affect the interpersonal dynamics of a game of Good Society significantly. It's best to discuss ahead of time whether any players in your game would like to play an older character or 40 plus older character. Places will indicate if they involve a generational gap and whether that gap is optional and can be removed. Desires that require a player to take on the role of an older major character indicated with an age tag. Ugh. Having older characters can add an additional drama to the game through parent-child relationships, past histories and scandals, and wealth and inheritance. And of course, it's never too late for romance, 100%. Older characters are generally more interesting to play when there are other characters their age, whether they are major characters or connections. The role of the dowager will inherently produce an older character, but almost any character role can be played as any age. Amazing. Amazing. And there you go. So this is what your spread would look like, so to speak. Having the family background there, having the character role there, and then your two desire card in pink, and then in the blue the relationship card. Super duper. Alright, so that's like that first part of the backstory was done, so you created your major characters, but now we're going to look at the connections. This is one of my favourite things, I think. So we've said this before, they are the supporting characters that hold tremendous influence of the lives, situation and hearts of the major characters that they're attached to. Characters may love their connections or they may hate them, but their influence cannot be denied. Their secondary goal is to be a tool in the major characters' plots and schemes. We'll talk more about their role later on in the game. Fine. So this is what they look like. We've kind of seen it before. So that sort of relationship card, and then the connection card that comes, connection sheet that comes with them. So each player will create connections for their major characters using the steps outlined below. Ordinarily, they're generated using darker connections, but if you don't have access to this, there are some alternative rules which we can look at briefly. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy with the deck, to be honest with you, but I know not everyone will have it. As well as a connection card, a player will need one connection sheet for each connection they are creating. Cool. What kind of connections should I create? So they have a number of connection options on their character sheet to choose from, such as sibling, cousin, vicar, or estranged aunt/uncle. So if we go to this one, you can see them here. They're just there in tiny, tiny writing. These connection options will list the kinds of people most important in the character's world. If a player has any mandatory connections on their desire card, they must create these connections first and create other connections if the spots remain. So when deciding on which connection to create, select people who can put pressure on your major character. This could arise from any number of reasons, be it obligation and duty, rivalry, love, or shared family reputation. Create connections that your major character has strong feelings towards, or could have strong feelings towards your character, or both. Consider including any important characters that were mentioned during the first part of the backstory process. Did you mention a selfish older brother set to inherit the estate? Or perhaps you decided that without your parents, your major character survives only through the good graces of Sir Ainsworth and his family. So, here is the important thing. So depending on how many players you want indicates, and how many sessions you're going to play, indicates how many connections your major character can have. So, if we were doing like a full game, and we had a full five roster of players, we would find, okay, you would create 2 connections at the beginning, and then 1 during the game at any one point. Depending on how the additional connections can be added during the game upkeep phase, because those are important, because they're like you never know at any time when they could come into play. And obviously the less characters you have, you might have only a few of them, etc. If you're only doing 1 session and you get 1, etc. So it's quite useful to have. I'd actually have that printed out in some way for the players to see when we're doing it as well. Ordinarily, the facilitator will not create any connections unless they're also playing a major character. Cool, we don't need to know about that. However, on occasion you may realise that someone important was left out after all the connections have been created. In this case, the facilitator may choose to create an extra 1 or 2 additional connections. So yeah, if you're like, oh, but this person's really interesting, so yeah, have them on there as well. It's quite good. Creating mid-play, you might find yourself needing to create connections that they did not anticipate before. If a mid-play connection is available, a player can create a new connection anytime during the game to serve the needs of the story. If no extra connection is needed, they can decide not to create one. So I assume it remains the same during like you do in backstory. Instead of drawing connection cards, the player may choose from the deck that they believe to be most appropriate. So we'll get on to what that means in a second. So I wonder the number of, so this is absolutely, so everyone can create 2 and then create 1 in the game as well. It's not like only 1 can ever be created in the game. Any of the major characters can create 1 during game. I just wanted to double check that as well. I was like, oh no, maybe you can only ever create 1 other additional one. That's not true. So how do we create connections? I hear you ask. So you select the connection cards for the mandatory connections, draw connection cards, select connection options that will and match these with the cards drawn, fill it out, the sheet out, select a connection to control in the game, and then place 2 resolve tokens on each connection. What does that mean? So, first of all, we looked at those mandatory connections. Usually these connections take up one of the connections already slot as well. They may look, so when you're doing that, you may look through the deck of connections to select the card that you think would work well and set it aside for now. So you should always do that first to get that out of the way. Then you draw. So I'm going to grab my cards here. So if I shuffle them, connection cards. It's not going to be a very good shuffle, I'm afraid. So draw the number of connection cards equal to the number of connections you're creating plus 2. So I'm going to draw 4 if it was like a full, if we're doing a full game, so that's 4. Okay, so I've drawn 4 different cards there. Ooh, she says, cool. Select the connection options and match these with the cards drawn. So select. So if we looked at what do we got on this side? Sibling, cousin, childhood rival. Let's do childhood rival. Okay. And match with a connection card you've drawn. So already I can see something like Jonathan. So look at Jonathan here. He's either an army major, declining prospects, or army major and ambitious. So maybe you're like, oh, that could be quite interesting as a childhood rival that you grew up differently. There's also Edith I've drawn. Look at Edith. A strong-willed teenager with a well-connected family, or an exuberant teenager with an influential family. Oh, look at that, beautiful. So cute. There's also Anna and Granthus. Oh, I don't know how you pronounce it. That person's name, but there you go. So then you go, okay, say you wanted to pick, say we pick Jonathan, and then you pick one of the sides, and then you write all that information down in the relationship field on the connection sheet. So using one of these connection sheets here. So yeah, so the name of that person, the relationship. Oh, I've got that wrong. That's different. We'll come to the name in a second, I think. So the major character. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, name of that person, what the relationship is, whose major character it is, an opinion. So like again, trying to have the like army prospects and maybe that little bit of text underneath there as well. Their age, how many resolve tokens they've got, the card side, and then who it's played by, which we'll come to on the second, I think. Example stuff. Yep, I've just gone through all this, which is great. The aging card number. I just want to check the relationship. Yep, connection card's name. Yep. I will say you do think that the relationship, say that title there goes to this one, etc. It's not as clear on this one on the sheet, but it's fine. And then any additional notes you can put in here. Connections, a major opinion of the game. Okay, cool. Alright, and then what happens is each player, excluding the facilitator, selects a connection they did not create to control during the game. They should choose a connection that has no initial or obvious relationship to their own major character. This approach reduces the likelihood of scenes containing both a player's major character and the connection they are playing. However, the facilitator can always temporarily play a connection to avoid a player talking to themselves. Each player then places the connection sheet and a corresponding connection card in front of themselves and writes the name in the play-by field. They will then play and control this connection throughout the game, and then the facilitator will play the remaining connections, any that is left. So that means for you as a facilitator, if you're playing a full game, you will have maybe 4 or 5 NPCs that will all be kind of similar, perhaps. I had to play, I think, 3 different kinds of sisters in our game, which was really fun. But they all had the same voice, just made it a little bit easier. But players can also select to control a connection created by the facilitator if any existed as well. So it's lots of back and forth. It's a bit like any games, if you know any Jade Dragon games, Boss Creek games, where it's like those floating sort of background elements, like which have sheets on it, and you'd be like, well, today I'm going to play the park, or I'm going to play the darkness, etc., and move that around. So I like that. So that's sort of like easy peasy sort of thing to go through. And then place 2 resolve tokens on each connection. They'll be used by the person controlling the connection, and we'll explain how they work in a second. All good stuff. And then it talks about how you create it without deck of connections. We're going to skip through that. Again, I appreciate if you buy the PDF, you will get a copy of the things as well. So a little bit more extra bits and pieces, but it's useful. But you get tables as well, and maybe roll some dice and stuff, which would be useful. I like how there is alternative rules for this sort of thing as well, because sometimes we don't have the custom dice, or we don't have the deck or anything like that. There's some rules as well. If like a major new character enters, again, we won't look at that in too much detail. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit. But if somebody disappears for some reason, or you want to change your major character during the upkeep phase, there are rules for that as well, which we'll skip through. So before you begin your first cycle, check that everyone has the following. For every major character has a desire card, a relationship card that's been taken, a character role sheet, a family background, the connection sheet of the connection they will be playing during the game, 2 resolve tokens and 1 monologue token for their major character. In the middle of and also resolve tokens for the connection that they have. In the middle of the table, you should have the cycle of play, the public information sheet, and the connection sheets of all the connections played by the facilitator. The facilitator should have 3 resolve tokens, regardless of whether they're playing a major character. So this is where you're like, all that after an hour and a half. Oh God, is it worth it? Just because there is a lot to it, but actually having that conversation and building that up with the collaboration stuff, actually I think it really prepares you for a really good game. Everyone's invested. You just need to make sure you dedicate that time to the collaboration stage, to the backstory stage, and just really giving it due diligence and respecting it. I think it's very important. Alright, rules of play. These next 2 chapters will outline tools you would need to tell the story. This chapter covers the rules of play, whilst chapter 5 discusses the cycle of play that provides the story structure. We've kind of gone over it a little bit, but it's always good to double check these things as well. I won't read this too much, but it's so true. This, like, it's nice to have a big page all on it. This idea of consent and player comfort, because a lot of these games will be centered around the idea of romance and marriage. And these are topics and themes that we maybe want to explore in a lot of detail, or maybe just want to skip over because it's all about the relationships between the characters, perhaps. So we should always be respectful of each other and double check things, and just always ask if you're not sure about something. Ask if you don't know the rules. Ask if you're like, I'm going to do something, can I just check with you if that's okay? Like, break the immersion. No one's going to be upset that you did that. They'd be more upset if you didn't ask. Always ask. What do you think? Is that okay with you? So, and give yourself permission as a player or as a facilitator to step in and encourage dialogue as well if you see something happening, because sometimes it's left up to the facilitator, who might not catch it or might not be confident enough to catch it, and only if you're doing it to going, hey, is everything all right? Or let's move on from that, or something like that. I think it's very important. Okie dokie. So, the 6 sort of big things we're going to talk about. They sort of cover the rules of play are resolve tokens, negotiations, reputation, inner conflict, inner monologue, and playing connections. Those are these 6 sort of things to talk about. Resolve tokens are the most important things. So, in good society, every player has the ability to shape the story. However, you must do so according to the game's rules. These rules are determined that what you are allowed to shape the story simply by saying what happens and when you will need to use a resolve tokens. Resolve tokens allow players and facilitators to change narrative details about the world and twist events in a character's favour. They're named for and reflect a character's determination to pursue their goals. In general, you will need to use a resolve token for whenever you want to change or shape the narrative in a way that is significant to the story and beyond the actions of your major character. You will not need a resolve token for minor narrative changes or details. If you've played any, I think I've mentioned their name before, but Jade Dragon and Possum Creek games, this is a very similar thing. You know, using a token to change something or to add something to the scene. You know, getting a token from something else, etc. So it's just things to use. So we use resolve tokens in the main phase, the novel chapter phase, in the epistology phase, the letter writing phase, and in the reputation phase. But they're not used, but they may be, you may gain some on the rumour and scandal phases and in the upkeep phase as well. Each player starts with 2 resolve tokens, unless their desire card says otherwise. Usually if they've had a negative trait, they'll probably get an extra 1 just to help them out. The facilitator starts with 3. And each of the connections will have their own pool of 2 resolve tokens as well. Rumours and reputation tags can also provide additional resolve tokens during the game. We'll come into that in a second. So when you use a resolve token, discard it unless the rules direct you to negotiate with another player. If that is the case, give the token to that player or connection they control on a successful negotiation. So it's going to give. I think it's going to give you some examples. I'm going to look at that. So, because I think sometimes if you're very new to role-playing games, it can be actually quite tricky to be like, when do I use resolve token? Can I just use it now when I want something to happen? You know, not knowing the lines and sort of maybe the framework of when you would use one. It's up to you, the facilitator, to demonstrate what it is. Like, you've got an idea for a moment, you're going to come in and give that offer to them. And the way, if it's something that is beyond your character, like it's not within your character, it's like, you know, dice rolling. If you're like, oh, I want to open the door, but I'm really strong, you're going to open the door. You don't need to spend a token or roll a dice for it, for example. But if you're trying to be like, this door needs to be broken down in some way, it's like, it's barricaded up, etc. You can be like, okay, spend the token. You notice that on one side the wood is a little bit rotted, so maybe you kick it in and then you're able to get in that way. You know, that or something that you can, but it's up to the player what that intrusion is. Intrusion is not the right word, but it's what I think of when it's is it Modiphius Games that does that? In the Cypher system? I think so. Any game usually is like, and the Fate system, Fate does it as well, where you can be like, I'm going to give a player intrusion, they're going to give you tokens back and forth because they're very useful. And it allows for that collaboration currency, so to speak. So, when using a resolve token, it can be difficult at first, but it will quickly become second nature once you start playing. If you're not sure where the resolve token will be spent, the facilitator will help you work this out. As it says here, strongly suggest spending a few resolve tokens during the first novel chapter phase to illustrate how they work, and encourage the players to use them. Point out when they were required to use a resolve token, absolutely. These rules are also summarised on the cycle of play sheet as well. I think it's over here if I move. No, I lied. There's some rules here, I guess. So, you must spend a resolve token if you want your major character or connection you control to do or know something difficult or unlikely, which is of significance to the story. You got to spend a resolve token if you want a connection you control to do something harmful to the interests of a major character or connection, which is significant to the story. You must spend the resolve token if you want to create, contribute, or change the narrative details, or events or details that are significant to the story and are beyond the actions of your major character or connections you control. Or if you want to compel a major character or connections to do or feel something. That's when that consent stuff sort of comes in for it. And this is giving you an example of stuff there. So, like, if you know, like, if you want to know something that they overhear someone talking about being disowned by their family and stuff, that you had maybe not been in the scene at all, but maybe you go, oh, at the end of the scene, oh, I'd like to have heard of that. How would that have been possible? That you happen to be next door in the library and you overheard it through a grate or something like that. So that'd be quite cool. And the same, so you know, if your connection wants to do something, appear in a scene, it's the same sort of thing, but they'll spend their own connection, etc. And similarly, if you want to do something harmful to the interests of major characters or connections. So that's quite an interesting one. Again, there's examples of this throughout as well. Doing so will always engage in a negotiation process. Again, it goes back to that consent thing as well. It's like you talk to the player who controls that major character, who controls that connection, and be like, I want this to happen. Oh, I'm not so sure. Maybe can we discuss about this finer details? Okay, they're not dead, there's something else, etc. I appreciate that was a really random thing to say, but I'm just thinking about it. This is my favourite one, is shaping the world. So you spend a resolve token to create, contribute, or change narrative events to something that, that's beyond your actions. So this is a great example. Nadia wants Lady Thorne's carriage to be overturned on her way to the estate so she doesn't make it to the ball. This is significant to the story as Lady Thorne was planning to publicly reveal Emma's illegitimate parentage. Nadia must spend a resolve token for the carriage to be overturned. As this is harmful to Lady Thorne's interest, the negotiation process is engaged with her player, Edwin. There you go. So that's a big example there. There's always carriages overturning. And then compelling others. So you must spend a resolve character to compel a major character or connection to do or feel something. Compelling characters always engages in that negotiation process. And in that, rather than discarding it, you give that resolve token to the compelled player for their use later. So that's sort of there's the currency on that as well. If all the players are in agreement, do I need to spend the resolve token? It's not required unless the negotiation process is engaged. I think you should always... It gets to a point where you might have spent all your resolve tokens, so you can't really do much. So I think the compelling stuff and the negotiated rates, as long as it keeps the currency go around, is really good. That's what I discovered anyway. What is significant to the story? We don't really need to look at this as well. Again, use your own best judgment, I guess. And also will depend on the tone as well. And again, more information, more examples of stuff like what does it mean to do or know something that's difficult or unlikely. So like overhearing conversation is a great example. I suggest like if you're going through this with your group, giving these examples. I love this. Establishing a prior relationship with a character where none existed before. Very, very cool. Love that. So again, more examples. So here's a negotiation. I think this is kind of important just to go through. There are 3 situations where a player wishing to spend a resolve token must first enter a negotiation with another player. Compelling, harming the interest, or interfering with the effects of another player's positive reputation condition. I really like this when you're interfering, because sometimes there's lots of people doing resolve tokens and stuff. There's no limit on it. I think you just want to make sure that you've got to resolve each resolve token to make sure people aren't just piling on for the sake of piling on, so to speak. So... let's talk about it. So, negotiation process. So the player using a resolve token offers it to the player of the affected major character or connection, stating exactly what they want to achieve with the token. The affected player can choose to either accept it with conditions, or reject the token. I think those are fairly straightforward enough. It's nice to see it all written out as well, just so we got it in clarity as well. So harming a character's interest should be interpreted broadly to allow for player consent as appropriate. Like breaking down a carriage, someone's brother falling in love with another person of ill repute, tripping the Duke's wife at the ball, etc. A token is not harmful to a character's interest simply because it is helpful to another character's opposing interests. That's a good thing. That's probably a good thing to discuss as well. So here's the one I kind of wanted to focus on a little bit, because I didn't really understand this one when I ran it through the first time. So when does a resolve token interfere with a positive reputation condition? The resolve token interferes with a positive reputation condition. So where is it? One of these things, these two perhaps. If it directly conflicts with that condition or cancels out one of its effects. So that's really the example here. Fitzwilliam has a reputation condition, social capital. As a result of the condition, when Fitzwilliam offers a connection relationship in advice in confidence, they will follow it. Fitzwilliam has advised Henry that he should tell Emma how he feels. Emma's player, Shani, wants to spend a resolve token to stop Henry confessing to Emma. Since the resolve token would prevent the effect of the reputation condition, this engages the negotiation process with Fitzwilliam's player, Nadia. Nadia accepts Shani's cut token, and Henry decides it is not yet time to confess. Other conditions will continue to follow Fitzwilliam's romantic advice as usual. So, again, it's getting into the sort of the nitty-gritty of those conditions and stuff. I think ultimately, as long as you have that the conversation out and open, and it doesn't take too long to resolve. Like if it's a bit of back and forth, we'll be like, oh, let's call a quick break so we can have a little bit of think about it, because ultimately you don't want this discussion to take away from the story, because the story is more important to these things. Note that you do not need to engage the negotiation process to use resolve in token in this way that interferes with a negative reputation token. This is because it is generally beneficial to the player interest of the major characters with the condition. If it is harmful to the player's interest, then the negotiation process will already be engaged. Yeah. So yeah, and then what to do if you use multiple, if you have result tokens affecting multiple characters. Again, I think it's going to say, isn't it? You just have a chat, consent to where that token goes to. You know, if it goes to the major character or go to one person, it would make sort of sense. At their option, the facilitator can provide additional resolve tokens from the general supply to make sure all affected major characters receive a token as well. I think that's fair as well. Making it just super clear and obvious. Yeah, just really helpful. I mean, you can always add stuff. It's best to accept tokens you are offered in during a notification. You can always say yes, but only if, and add conditions as needed. So yeah, it's just encouraging you to yes and your players, right? Reputation. Okay, moving on slightly. So, how reputation works and the different rules involved. An actual step-by-step process of adjusting a reputation which occurs in the reputation phase is later on, which you'll get into the cycle of play. So, reputation is a good society. In a good society, is representing society's opinion of a major character. A character with poor reputation can be expected to be excluded or ostracized, whilst a character held in high esteem will be respected and heard. During the game, society will judge the actions of your character, and new opinions about them will spread through the drawing room circles. They may be pronounced as a wise or thoughtful person worthy of good regard, or perhaps society will think them silly or stubborn and question their desirability as company. As your character's reputation mounts, it will begin to impact on their daily life. Poor retribute could fracture a relationship with a close friend, whilst high regard may earn them with the attention of a patron. Reputation is represented by three different concepts. These are the reputation criteria, the reputation tags, and reputation conditions. So reputation criteria we can find here on the family background. So that's where you'd find it there. But then the reputation tags will be on, they'll be on the public info table. And then the reputation conditions can be found on your character sheet. So all this information is on three separate parts, which again can be a little bit confusing when you're first starting out, but it's very good to just be like, okay, I'm a massive fan of just printing everything out, having everything out on a screen. I do feel like this game is slightly better in person for it, just because then you can easily point to stuff, just make it easier. But again, if there's a way to make this a module in Roll20 or to put it on some sort of VTT, I'm forever welcome to it, so that people can actually see and then the GM can select it, just because I think it's a little bit easier. Or even just using like a Miro board or using Google Docs as it suggests earlier on as well. So let's just talk about these very quickly. So reputation criteria determines whether a character's reputation will rise or fall. These criteria represent society's values and standards by which everyone is judged, as well as specific expectations arising from a character's family background. So all that's on the family background. Reputation tags are objectives that describe how society views each character as a result of their behaviour. So if we go back to here, gain a positive tag if you've done these things. Gain a negative tag if you've done these things. Some examples of tags. What I quite like, so these are the beginning ones. You don't have to stick to them throughout the game. So every reputation stage, you can make one. About what I asked is for players to be like, what do you think, what kind of tag would this person get, and what positive? And it just helps a little bit, because sometimes it's really difficult to think of anything. And then finally, you got reputation conditions. There are narrative states that reflect a major character's a significant rise or fall in reputation. These trigger when you accumulate either 3 positive or 3 negative reputation tags. Cool. And it's just going to go into a bit more detail here about each one, right? That's fine. Yep. We've kind of gone over this as well. But this is the interesting thing. So major characters will still meet the reputation criteria even if their actions were occurred in private, in quotation marks. Basically, the reputation represents the weight of society's expectations, which are ever constant rather than rumour and gossip spread by particular characters. Besides, in Jane Austen world, the very walls have ears, and there is little done in confidence which is not reported to the world at large. Lady Whistledown's papers, for example. However, whether an action took place in public or in private, it can be considered when determining if it contravened society's conventions or created hardship for the character. For example, whilst a private show of affection may be acceptable, a public display during a dinner party will simply not be allowed. And then we've talked about tags a little bit before. Here's an example of what it would look like on the thing. This person has got 3 positive tags, so that would trigger that positive condition when it comes into it. I'm just trying to read what it says. Yeah, so first is that you accumulate them and you have the same type, they'll trigger a reputation condition, but they can be used to affect the story, which I love this, right? So, I've lost it. No. Come back. There we go. There we go. So, to use the reputation tag to affect the story, you first must explain what change you want the tag to create in the narrative. Then you trade that tag for a resolve token and spend it to achieve the desired effect, following the same rules, and enter the negotiation process. Finally, once a resolve tag has successfully spent, erase the tag from the public sheet. So, for example, Fitzwilliam's reputation as wise might allow him to convince Charlotte's parents to listen to him, whilst Emma's reputation as reckless could mean her brother won't leave her side at the ball. Here's the cool thing though, so positive reputation tags can only be used by the player of the major character they belong to, so only you can use your own positive tags, right? However, any player can use a negative reputation tag against the major character that bears it. Where a negative reputation tag is used by the player it belongs to, it must be used against the interests of that character. Once it's been successfully used to affect the story, it is erased, and erased tags can no longer count towards reputations. I love that, right? It's all about that compel stuff. Compelling people to do it. It's just, yeah, absolutely love it. I do find it a little bit tricky. This is where I struggle a little bit with it. So let's read out these examples. I think they're a little bit more helpful here. I struggle with this a little bit. So, creating and using a positive tag. Emma's self-sacrifice during the ball has earned her the commendation of society. During the reputation phase, Emma's player Shani creates a positive reputation tag of selfless and writes it down on the public information sheet. During the next novel phase, Emma wants to convince Lady Thorne that her motives towards Jeff are pure. Emma depicts her intentions towards Jeff as selfless, invoking her reputation tag. Shani then trades that tag for a resolve token and offers it to compel Lady Thorne to change her mind. The Lady Thorne character accepts, and Shani erases selfless from the public information sheet. So yeah, it's just a way for you to generate those resolve tags to compel other people, or to spend it in such a way. Right, opposite side of it, let's talk about negative tags. After some shocking events at the party, Charlotte's reputation takes a tumble. Edwin creates a reputation of disrespectful to describe how the society now views her as a result of her actions. He writes disrespectful on the public information sheet. During the next chapter, Tammy, who plays Charlotte's mother, a connection, decides to introduce some extra drama for Charlotte, which is Edwin's major character. Tammy would like Charlotte's mother to ban Charlotte from attending the upcoming ball on the grounds that her disrespectful acts will put the family name in jeopardy. Banning Charlotte from the ball would harm the interests of a major character, so Tammy must expend a resolve token. Since Tammy is invoking Charlotte's disrespectful tag, they can trade the tag for a resolve token and offer it to Edwin. Edwin accepts the resolve token, and Charlotte's mother bans Charlotte from attending the ball, and that disrespectful tag is then erased. So again, it requires a lot of communication, a lot of back and forth, and checking and making sure that public information sheet is up to date and correct, which is great. But you can use your own major character's negative tags. So the negative tags can be used by yourself and other players, but also, but the only ones that can use positive is yourself. You can only use your own positive tags, which is useful to know. And yet there's the reputation conditions. We've already talked about these a little bit. It will immediately trigger when you gain 3 or more of these reputations. You could choose one of the 2 reputations, and you immediately after you've got that condition, you frame a short scene which shows that condition occurring and how it affects the major character. These conditions remain in effect until you drop below those 3 tags of relevant type. If a character drops below those 3, their reputation clears in the next reputation phase. Except, of course, if they gain an extra tag of that type. So, again, it's a little bit back and forth a little bit. So you just got to be a bit flexible with this system to make sure you get everything right. And just be aware and just constantly double check. Like, that's what I always say with the upkeep phase. It's like, okay, has everyone got this? Has everyone got that? You know. So a character's player may choose to frame a short scene exploring the consequences of this change of reputation as well. Reputation tags that have been erased no longer count towards reputation tags. Yes, we know that. Cool, we don't need to look at this. Alright, let's look at inner conflict. I don't really know too much about this because, again, like I said, the one shot I played, it was because it was shorter. We didn't want to, we didn't put it into our game per se. So I do think this is maybe a more optional element from what I understand. It's a way to help with longer games to sort of track the progress of you as a player, like where you're going to. So every major character in Good Society has an internal conflict, a struggle they face between 2 pressures that pull them in opposite directions. Should they choose a suitor out of love or marry for financial prudence? Should they obey their family or follow their heart? Should they seek the town's acceptance or pursue their own craving for revenge? They're only used in games of 4 or more cycles, which gives the players a chance to explore and develop their internal world slowly over time. You use these inner conflicts to understand your major character better, gives them a complex and interesting inner world, and heighten the game's drama. It's also a way to get more resolve tokens. You know what? That makes more sense. We didn't have... we kind of ran out of tokens quite quickly on, but I think because people just were spending things rather than compelling things. So examples of inner conflicts could be family versus independence, acceptance, all those ones that we just talked about. Cool. Just take a quick sip of water. So, they always follow the form of something versus something. Think about the 2 pressures that weigh most strongly on your major character. What has torn them? Why did they stay up late at night? Or what do they stay up late at night mulling over? What 2 paths are they unable to choose from? Express it as abstract concepts rather than specific examples. This gives it scope to affect the character's overall behaviour rather than being confined to a single choice. Absolutely. Each player decides on the character's initial conflict at the end of the first cycle, so that'll be in the upkeep phase then. Once you've chosen your conflict, write it in the inner conflict table, found on your character roll sheet. So, here we go, over here. Well, some actions there too. And you should write it on the public information sheet as well, so here. That's where you'd write it there as well. Oh, and as an example there. So say love versus status is one. Progressing an inner conflict. So at the end of every cycle in the upkeep phase, you mark the inner conflict table on the character's roll sheet to progress their major inner character struggle. Look at the criteria listed in the inner conflict table on your character roll sheet. Did your character's actions over the last cycle fit any of these options? If so, mark a box on the side of conflict that motivated them. For example, if Fitzwilliam proposed to Emma, he has acted in a pursuit of love, so he would mark the box next to you took action in pursuit of this side of the conflict on the love side. You may mark off multiple boxes for a single action if it meets more than one criteria. If your character took action on both sides of the inner conflict, you may also mark the same criteria on both sides. Once you've marked off the appropriate boxes, check off that number of boxes on each side of the public information sheet. Then take 1 resolve token for each box you marked up to a maximum of 2 tokens. Interesting. So let's have a look, see what you get for this. You took action in pursuit of this. You sacrificed something important to you for this. You hurt or pushed someone away, important to you for this. You degraded your reputation or went against your conscience for this. And your actions in pursuit of this side of the conflict destroyed your chance of successfully pursuing the other. Ooh, some nice choices there. And they're nice and vague enough so that, yeah, you can apply to each one. That'd be really, yeah, I really like that. Boxes remain marked off until the inner conflict is complete. Until then, a player can't mark off the same blocks on the inner conflict table again. Interesting. So on each side, it's just 5 boxes on each side though. On a rare occasion, unexpected events or plot twists will render a character's inner conflict irrelevant or outdated. A player who believes their inner conflict is no longer relevant may choose, instead of progressing their inner conflict, to clear it and create a new one. Cool. but this does not count as completing the conflict, as so the player does not receive an extended backstory action. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of that before. I'm sure we're about to find out. So here's an example. So I see that. So you count them up essentially on each side. Cool. Easy. Completing an inner conflict. When a player has marked off 6 boxes of the inner conflict table, or all 5 on one side. I was going to say, hang on. Oh, on the inner conflict table, I see. So I guess 6 in total, or 5 on one. So yeah, it could be back and forth. Oh, so rather than going like 3 and 3, I understand, yeah. So either a full sweep or 6 boxes in total. Cool. Then the inner conflict is complete. When this happens, follow 4 steps. Reflect on the conflict. Frame a short scene where your major character reflects on their internal struggle. This may be a vignette, letter, or inner monologue. It can be about self-discovery if you feel your character's resolve was resolved, or being torn if the conflict still rages in their heart. Clear off the inner conflict table, so clear this table. Yep. Easy enough. Create a new inner conflict with the guidelines on page 99. You may want to reuse the same inner conflict again. Take a expanded backstory action. You'll be rewarded. These actions give you a chance to add new characters or plot twists or events to your game. Oh, very cool. These are explained later on in the game. All right, cool. Maybe we'll get to that then. Right. This is one of my favourite mechanics, the inner monologue. Wouldn't you love to know what your suitor and rivals are truly thinking? All players in Good Society receive a monologue token to spend, which they regain at the end of every cycle. So you should spend them every cycle if you can. At any time during the game, you can play your monologue token on another major character. That character must immediately reveal their innermost thoughts and feelings through an inner monologue. When you play a monologue token on a major character, you may choose to ask them a specific question to answer, such as who does Henley really love, or simply ask for their thoughts and feelings at the present moment. These tokens are best played during the novel chapter or epistolary phases of the dramatic moments of high tension or emotion. When an inner monologue is triggered, we pause the action and focus on the major character's inner world. We hear out loud the thoughts and feelings that they would never publicly convey. This could include what they're thinking, their true emotions, and what they plan to do next. An inner monologue does not have to be delivered in perfect Austen prose, although it can be. Rather, it is a glimpse into the character's internal thoughts and delivered in any manner the player may wish. Discard the monologue token that triggered the scene after the monologue is complete. Oh, it's so good. Players should not hesitate to use the monologue at the most dramatic part of a cycle of play. If they do not use the token, they must spend it in the upkeep phase, which occurs at the end of every cycle. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. If you use it in the upkeep phase, it says the player delivering the monologue may choose to situate it within the short scene to give their major character context. For example, whilst they look over old letters or spying their old flame in the hustle and bustle of the town square. Each player's monologue token is returned to them during the upkeep phase at the end of each cycle, ready for the next. So you always have them. I do believe there's no rule to say that you can't give your monologue token to the same person. So like you could have a couple of the same person could do one. It's whatever the story demands it really. I just think it's such a cool thing. Alright, playing connections. We'll go through this quickly because I think we've described enough of the connections to get a good understanding of it. Whilst each connection is created by a particular player, that player does not have the ownership over them. Rather, connections are controlled by the person playing them, whether another player or the facilitator. So each player during the backstory will select another major character, a connection of another major character to control during the game, and then the remaining connections will be played by the facilitator. Where needed, the facilitator can step in or play the other connections ordinarily controlled by the other players. A person playing the connection has exclusive use of the resolve tokens for that connection. They always begin with 2 and in their pool, and can use these to have that connection significantly impact on the story. So realistically, those sort of secondary characters are to complicate the lives of major characters and be a tool in the major characters' plot and schemes. They are not major characters, though. You might enjoy playing them, but don't make that your don't bring the your story is your story. You know, that's the only thing I'd say with that, because people love playing the connections, which is cool, but that's not the story we're telling. There you go. It says it there. Connections are not the central characters of the story. Your primary aim is to complicate the lives of the major characters. All good stuff. And then giving you some examples of what that complication would be like. All good stuff. Close relationships. If they've got usually that relationship, you have that connection, could really work well as well in the role play. Being a tool. Yada yada yada. Oh, look at that. That's such a nice picture. Such a nice drawing. All right. Cycles of play. Excellent. How are we doing? Oh, just over 2 hours. Okay, that's not too bad, isn't it? So we're going to look at this final one, and then I think that will be us done. I think. But we will see. We will see. Whoop. So as mentioned earlier, it's played in cycles. In this chapter, we'll explain each phase in detail, how they work together as a structured framework to help you create an Austen novel. Cool, cool, cool. So here it is again, played in order. So this is one example of a cycle. So you go from novel chapter to reputation, to rumour and scandal, to the epistology, epistolary, or the letter writing phase, as I call it. The novel chapter, reputation, another letter writing phase, and then the upkeep. This whole cycle, this whole framework is supposed to take 2 to 3.5 hours, and ideally you should be playing roughly 3 to 8 cycles of play, so at least 3 sessions of it. And it's going to tell you here, isn't it? You can play shorter games, as it says here, 2 to 3 cycles. It recommends using a play set in full and then using those rule adjustments I talked about earlier. So not having that inner conflict, not having extended background actions, etc. And the rumours don't fade out as well. Shorter games are likely to have a lighter tone, have more action and less character development, just due to their quick pacing, etc. Yeah, more like an Oscar Wilde play than an Austen novel. Like Lady Windermere's Fan is a cracking play, by the way. Highly recommend. Whereas the longer games allow for more scope for emotions to simmer below the surface, for characters to change and develop, for multiple story arcs to occur. Pacing is more natural, and these games will have more of an Austen feel. Cool, 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 cool. When your game reaches 8 cycles, assess whether all the players are still invested in the story. If they are, continue on. If not, it's time to finish the story and start the game anew. So, how long can each cycle take? Yep. So this is giving you advice about like how long each cycle is. It's because it's going to completely depend on those novel chapter sections, because that's when you can do most of the role play. So everything else is a little bit shorter. I think the only other example would be if it was a letter writing phase as well. So pacing your game. We don't need to. That kind of helpful. So yeah, that first cycle is the story's introduction, so maybe you're a little bit more hands-on with like, and now we're in the novel chapter phase, or now we're in, so just making sure that everything knows, and maybe adding those, it says here, like 1 or 2 dramatic events. And then you have the next couple of cycles, which is the middle of the story, and then the last cycle being the conclusion, which makes sense in terms of storing it. So ending the game. When it comes to end the game, you will enter the final cycle. The final cycle operates slightly differently to the other cycles. Follow the 4 steps ago. Firstly, let everyone know that the game is ending. Skip that rumour and scandal phase. So if I go up here, it's going to say it here, isn't it? Where is it? Say skip rumour and skip. There you go. Skip in the last cycle of the game. Skip the second reputation and move straight to the final letter writing phase. There you go. Skip and that's it's the epilogue essentially. In that one as well. This is also just great to have. Again, I would print this out in on a big A2, I think, or an A3. So it's useful to have somewhere. So that final letter writing phase is the epilogue. Each player writes 1 letter from their major character who sets some years after the events of the final novel chapter. During the letter, the character comments on the progression of their lives since the events of that final chapter came to a close. When the epilogue is finished, and this is my favourite thing, and the game's over, the Jane Austen novel you've written together is complete. All that's left to do now is to give it a title. I love that. I love that. So what do we call this book that we've created together? It's such a... I just think that's really cute. Super, super cute. Alright, so that first phase, the novel chapter phase, in character play is where the majority of the action is going to happen. Basically, it's a number of scenes that you put together. So players can call for what action they'd like to see, where you want to set it, and the facilitator will ask questions and guides that action. It will end when all the players have had an opportunity to explore their character story. Here it says, typically between 45 minutes and an hour in length. Much longer, depending on if you've got players who like to talk. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. So, here's the thing. So when you're starting a novel chapter, you've got to decide what kind of chapter type it is. Is it event? Is it visitation? Or is it a split? The first chapter of a cycle, of a game is always an event chapter. But here's an example of what it is. You want to define what that chapter detail is, what event it will focus on, if any, who's going to be present, what kind of scenes you would like to see. Maybe you need to plan some elements ahead of time. Again, this game is so collaborative in that sort of sense. And then you set the scene together by describing the surroundings and where the chapters actually should take place. So that, again, it's all that collaborative, like, let's describe what we've got going on here. So the organizer of the ball, connection of who's getting married, etc. So that's in an event. So yeah, you may want to ask the person who's most connected to the chapter's event to describe the scene, which is interesting. But then in a visitation chapter, we'll talk about the difference in a second, the player who initiates the visitation sets the scene. Where possible, start the chapter in media res, so in the middle of the action. Yeah, I mean, that's true for all games, I think. So, event chapters, they focus on a particular event, such as a birthday party, a funeral, a long walk through nature, or much anticipated ball. These are usually full cast chapters, so they contain for all or most of the game's important characters to be present, even if they don't normally appear in any scenes, or if they don't actually appear in any scenes. For example, the town's fair could be attended by anyone, or Lady Fawn's dinner parties are known for boasting the presence of all of society's most fashionable. Whilst some scenes may involve all the characters, most will only include 2 or 3. So again, it feels like setting up an improv structure in a way, which is quite useful to have. And here are some examples. 1 second. Excuse me. Some examples of some events, which is actually quite useful to have. We had a funeral, actually, in our game, and that was really fun to put together. Yeah, really cool. And we even combined some of these suggestions as well, which is really, really cool. Spotlights. So yeah, this is, again, anyone who's in any role-playing will know about this. It's about making sure that you follow one character for a little bit and then maybe move on to another one. So it's almost like, as it describes here, like a cameraman of the movie adaptation. You're following which character around, what the story is and what they're going to do next, etc. And maybe the other players will suggest the different kinds of scenes they'd like to see happen to this character. And again, a little bit like Fiasco in a way, I think. They're best used for longer games and have 2 uses. First, if you've got not enough opportunity to progress their story, so you can pull that character into focus. But secondly, it can be in sort of spotlight at important moments in their story. Basically, it's a way to make that character shine, which is really, really cool. Meanwhile, we have visitation chapters. They're like a little series of short scenes, or like a montage, or a tag run, if you're used to those in improv, where it's just very short scenes. It's an opportunity for intimate conversations and for characters to take action outside the public eye. A visit, for the purpose of this chapter, can be interpreted broadly, like attendance. Like, it may indeed be the attendance at another person's house, but it could also be an arrangement to meet somewhere by mutual agreement, or even a conversation between 2 characters in the same household. They take turns initiating a single scene, where their major character or connection they control visits upon another character or characters. The facilitator may also initiate a scene. The person initiating the scene may decide where and when it takes place, and who will be in attendance. They may also choose any major characters or connections they wish to be present. Once they've set the scene, then it plays out, and then each visitation should capture one continuous moment or action or conversation, and it should only last about 7 to 10 minutes, which is quite cool. If necessary, they can establish what happens before and after the conversations as well. So that's quite cool. Again, it's that sort of almost rapid fire of little scenes, which is great. And then finally, a split chapter. It portrays simultaneous but related events in different places. These can increase dramatic tension by showing events in parallel. It's commonly used to capture a situation where timing is important, but you may find other uses over the course of your games. The contents of a split chapters can be described by using the word meanwhile as an edit there in improv. So, meanwhile, here we go. It's very, I'd use that. Again, it's very clear to all the players what's happening there. In a split chapter, the facilitator, along with the help of the players, will alternate the focus between the parallel events. The best time to switch in between events is at the conclusion of individual scenes within them, or at the point of especially high tension, aka a cliffhanger. During split chapter, major characters can move from one event to another if that makes sense in the story as well. So those are the 3 different kinds of novel chapters we can have as well. And it's going to describe like what things you can do, etc. But again, it's mostly roleplay-esque. And again, it's that idea that you can use those resolve tokens and maybe the monologue tokens as well to just move things along. I quite like this a little bit. It says like, you know, if you, instead of going, I want to use my resolve token, I want to just, if you hold it up in the air, the facilitator should indicate what's going to happen. So you don't want to interrupt what's the play is going on. Perhaps, you know, I don't mind it too much, but I think it's quite useful here. It's like, oh, you just signal that I've got something I'd like to say, and you're like, oh, just let's finish where that person is. Basically, it's a way to stop interrupting the flow of the narrative in a way. And I like it. I don't mind it too much, though. I'd rather people just be like, hey, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to be a monologue token. You know, I just think it's nice because then it's really clear to everyone. All right, so after you've had the novel chapter, you have the reputation phase. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but here we go. So during the reputation phase, you will assess the character behavior against the reputation criteria so that you have it on the family background sheets. Depending on whether you've gone up or down, maybe you'll create some reputation tags. If they didn't meet any of their criteria, then, you know, whether it's positive or negative, then they don't create any tags. That's one thing to say there. And then similarly, if they've triggered any 3 positive or 3 negative reputation tags that they haven't already got a condition for, then they choose one of those conditions and activate it as well. And then you can remove them as well if your reputation condition has dropped below the 3 corresponding ones as well. Now, here we go, because we've not really covered this in this run-through just yet, but rumour and scandal phase. So this occurs once every cycle, and the players determine what juicy gossip is circulating through the drawing room of the gentry, and which of it society believes it to be true. So rumour is a piece of gossip flying about the town, such as Henry's planning to propose to Emma, but only if she'll keep their engagement secret. Or Thomas may not seem eligible, but he's about to inherit the Churchill estate. Rumours don't have to be about major characters. They could be about connections or even world events. In a game featuring naval officers, the rumour the war will break out with France and the Navy will be called back holds considerable power. I quite like that. It's about making statements which are true about the world. Might be a bit more interesting if you can't think of anything specific for a major character. During this phase, players will act as society rather than their major characters. It's not the characters that are creating and spreading rumours, but rather the town as a whole. This means players can create and spread rumours that are against their characters' interests and without worrying about the repercussions or discovery. Rumours help players connect plot lines and shape how the story will progress. A rumour can provide inspiration for where the story goes and may in fact be proven to be true. Whoop. So, you will create and spread rumours. We'll go around in a circle, each one taking a turn to either create a rumour or spread a rumour. The direction of the circle is then reversed and each player takes a second turn, so each player does this twice. This means the last player to have their first turn will be the first player to have the second turn. Yeah. Snake draft is how I call it, or that's how I know it as. During their turn, the person can either create a rumour or spread a rumour. Each rumour can only be spread once. If there are no rumours available, then they must create a new rumour. Very simple. All the rumours are public information that are recorded on there for ease. So here's an example of the Worthings are secretly in debt. The rumours that are not spread represent baseless talk passing from sitting room to sitting room. Although not necessarily true, these rumours can still be influential in shaping the opinions of the connections and noteworthy influences. When a rumour is spread, it becomes more widely known, and most in society will believe it to be true. It may even become true in play. So when a player chooses to spread a rumour, you mark the circle next to it, as example here, and this represents a resolve token that is now attached to this rumour. Any person can spend this resolve token during the novel chapter or a letter writing phase to have the rumour change the story. As always, the rules governing the use of resolve tokens apply, so once it has been used, cross off the corresponding rumour. So that's quite cool, I like that. And then, fade out rumours have not been spread. Gossip and scandal does not stay current for long, especially if nobody is spreading them. During this rumour and scandal phase, rumours that have not been spread will fade out. Rumours that are fading out are marked with a symbol on the sheet, so this symbol here is almost like a graph going down, whilst the rumours that have already faded out are then crossed out. At the end of each rumour and scandal phase, cross off any rumours that have yet to be spread that have been previously marked with a fade out symbol. So you do this at the end. So say, for example, Jeff and Charlotte are engaged. No one spread it in that first rumour cycle. You put it as declining. And then the second session, so the second cycle of play, when it comes back, you still have a chance to spread that rumour. But if no one's interested by the time that second one goes around, it is then just crossed out. Yeah, as it says here. All good stuff. It merely exists as the players to wonder at the strange news that some society once believed to be true. Some examples, all good. My favourite phase. The epistolary phase. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know, I keep messing it up every time I do. In this phase, each person may write up to 2 letters from either their major characters or a connection that they control. The facilitator may write as many letters as required from a major character or connection that they control, or any other necessary person, for example, a records office, or court official, or the Duke's chief of staff. The players can write the letter in any order. They do not have to write their letters consecutively. To write a letter, a player must first state who the letter is from, their major character, connection, and who they will receive it. They will then dictate the contents of the letter out loud. There is no limits to what you can include in the letter, but the normal rules for collaboration and the use of resolve tokens apply. Letters may communicate a message, describe an event in the past, a series of events, or document a change in feelings or intentions. When a player writes a letter describing past events, they may either flash back to a brief scene where these events took place, or simply describe what happened. But what if you want to receive a letter? Well, this is where you use the resolve tokens. You can you sort of compel another major character or a connection or someone else entirely, so that court official, etc., to write you a letter. If the author of the desired letter is a major character or connection, this counts as compelling, so that's that negotiation process. The player offering the token may state what they would like written in the letter. However, the player of the major character or connection offering it will still dictate the letter. But if it's a one-off supporting character, so like a doctor, official, or lawyer, then the resolve token is discarded. So that I had it in my game where somebody wanted a letter from the doctor, and they dictated what they wanted it from me, and I just repeated it back and did some nice played some text as well, which is really cool. I really like that. If you're not sure who, if any, should pay a resolve token to, ask who gets to decide the letter's content. If a character sending a letter gets to decide the content and significance, then no resolve token needs to be spent. However, if the player of the recipient decides the letter's content or significance, they need to use a resolve token. Cool. I really like that. I think it's one of the coolest things I've seen in role-playing games. Like, when I gave them the task of like, okay, you've got some quiet time now, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to write letters, all the players sat down and read and wrote their letters out. It was actually quite nice. So I would recommend anything like that. I think it's really cool. So I definitely would include that in other games. And then finally, the upkeep phase. Between cycles, there is an upkeep phase, which just refreshes things for the next cycle. It's just that little bit of admin. So use up any monologue tokens. We kind of talked about that before. Refresh them so that everyone gets them for the next cycle. Refresh the resolve tokens. So if the facilitator has less than 3 tokens in their pool, they increase their resolve tokens to 3, regardless of how many they spent in the previous cycle. If you're playing a game of 3 or less cycles, everyone receives 1 additional one. That's fine. They don't refresh it all to the total that they had at the beginning. Fair enough. Progress those inner conflicts. So we talked about those inner conflicts earlier. Which we talked about. Review the collaboration. Just maybe sure that everyone's still in keeping, everyone's enjoying what's been set out. Is there anything they want to add or take away from like what we want to keep in the game? What do we want to remove from the game? Replace the desires. You may be like, I'm done with that desire now. I want to change it something else. And expanded actions. So this is something I've not really seen before, so we'll have a quick look at it as well. Note if the players wish to avoid slowing down the game, they can also hold this action for the end of the session or even in between sessions. So yeah, it could be something that they come back to at the beginning of the session as well. We don't need to worry about the desires so much because you can replace them, if you've achieved them, if they become impossible or illogical, it doesn't make sense anymore, or it's no longer interesting to explore. Those are the 3 times you would like maybe replace a desire, which is fine. We're not going to create a new desire. We don't need to go into that. As you can tell, this book gets into a lot of nitty-gritty details of which is really cool. Don't get me wrong, it's really, really cool, but don't need it for everything. But let's see what this expanded backstory actions are, because I haven't played with these before. Again, these are for much longer cycles of games. The world of Jane Austen novels is never constant. Desires change, secrets are discovered, and new eligible suitors appear out of nowhere. During upkeep, Players who complete their inner conflict had the opportunity to expand the world, inventing new connections, changing fortunes, and even switching major characters. Expanded backstory actions can take a little while to complete, and you may wish to save a step for the end of the session, or even one in between one session and the next. They can choose one of the followings: create a new connection, play an extra connection, change connections' fortunes, establish a relationship, and create a new major character. Okay. Create a new connection, makes sense. Place 2 resolve tokens. So this is an additional connection and does not prevent a player from creating a mid-play connection if they haven't already done so. Okay, so this is just like an additional thing. It's like it's a way to lift that cap of connections up. Play an extra connection, so take over the role of a connection other than your own currently played by a facilitator. This could be quite fun, I guess. Cool. Change connection's fortune. Something dramatic has happened to a connection between this cycle and the next. Pick one of the following. Reveal a shocking secret. Add it as a spread rumour to the public information sheet. Oh, that's quite cool. Reverse a connection's wealth from rags to riches, or perhaps riches to rags, and explain why. Reverse a connection's marital status from single to married, and perhaps engaged to single, and explain why. Or give the connection a strong desire and write it on their connection sheet. That's cool. It's like developing that sort of little story of the connection that you control. I quite like that. That's quite cool. Establish a relationship between a major character or a connection that you play with another major character or connection you play. Oh, that's quite cute. Continue the connection web, so to speak. This can be anything that interests you as long as it doesn't conflict with the story so far. If the relationship involves another player's major character, you must have their permission first. And then finally, create a major new character with a new desire, new drama. Use the rules for introducing a new major character. Your old major character doesn't disappear. They become a connection you control. Remember, they will no longer be a major character in the story, but will only appear when the plot demands it. Oh, so it's like the Duke in Bridgerton, right? Because the actor went off to play in the D&D film. That's how I'd imagine it, right? Their role becomes, as with all the connections, to complicate the lives of major characters and to be a tool in their plots and schemes. Your old character's connections will continue to exist without change. Cool. Alright, there you go. And then there's an example of the play there as well. Let's skip through this. We don't need to see an expanded version. I think we've got an idea. Oh. And then information for this facilitator. We don't need to go into too much because we've basically covered all of that. So I'm just going to move down a little bit. But it is very good, the essays in this. I did feel very comforting when I read it through earlier this year. I read it at Christmas, actually, for one thing. Some advice for facilitating the first session and different kinds of lengths of sessions as well. That's always very good. Play sets. Okay, let's have a quick look at the play sets, like examples of it. We don't go into too much detail about it. So they've got some examples here in the core book of farce, romantic comedy, and drama. If that's the kind of tonal ones you're looking for. Or if you're going for thematic ones that are like around certain subjects, you've got romance and love, scandal of reputation, rivalry and revenge, family matters, wealth and fortune, and obligation as well. These are different, by the way, to the ones that come in the expanded acquaintance book and PDF. Those ones are, I can read out a few of them here, for example. Downstairs at the Abbey, Emma, Forget-Me-Not, Sensibility and Swordsmanship, Pride and Prejudice and Practical Magic, so I introduced magics there. The Fey Courts one. Oh, this is the one I hadn't seen before. Lady Susan P.I. So that's a bit like Brindlewood Bay kind of things. And it talks about combining and hacking good society as well. Oh, and maybe we should read that, Hacking to Good Society, because that might be useful for me in the future. So there you go. And then it goes through like what you would do with those playsets. How would you choose one? Decide if you're going to use it in full or use it partially, just using the desires and relationships. Assemble the required materials. It does take a little bit of time. I suggest always printing them out or just having them in the online space that you're going to do as well. And how to make your own playset as well, which we won't look into too much just now because that's not what we're doing essentially. Cool. So yeah, so I quite like this. So if you're going to put up the fast playset, knowing how many players you've got in it, and then putting together those pre-generated character sheets using the following, which is quite good. And then always having a spare one just in case people are like, oh, I don't like any of these ones. So I think this is really useful. Really like how this is displayed. like putting the sets together, especially if you've got the cards as well, because all the numbers add up. It's very clever. It's very, very clever. And there's also a little bit of info about it and like what kind of game it's suitable for as well, which is really useful. Like if you're trying to just narrow down which play sets you'd like to play as well. But I think with all that out of the way, I'm just going to quickly skip through and see if there's anything else. Role playing, so yeah, this is where it goes on to the themes. So yeah, a bit more useful for stuff like if you wanted to read a bit more of a description of the character roles, which are maybe helpful if your players were planning on stuff. But that's kind of it, I think. I don't know if I want to put anything else in it. Sorry, just having a quick look through to see. Yeah, you can see, so it talks about a bit more expanded stuff on the character sheets as well, so it might be useful. Again, I'd quite like it if this was more of a primer that I could print out for the players. If that is something that's useful to people. But there you go. I'm going to quickly skip through to the end. What's this? Knowing Austen. So, yes, and then there's beautiful essays about like what kind of stuff that happens in these Austen like novels and like what, you know, again, really well written. Like clearly the I would say Good Society role players, that's not what they're called, story brewers, role playing have done their work incredibly well here. And I do think right at the end, if I quickly go through this glossary, always really good. An index. Oh, did they not do a? Oh, I thought they did like a media like ology about like, oh, here's some stuff to inspire you. But there you go. That is Good Society. I hope you've enjoyed it. Oh, Daniel, hello. Sorry, we're just finished up. Hope you're doing well. I hope you're feeling better. I'm so sorry to hear about the ear infection. That fucking sucks. But yeah, that is Good Society, Jane Austen. I love this game. I think it's super fun. But again, I think it does need to come with a caveat. It's like a really difficult board game. You have to be like, okay guys, we're going to play a game. You've just got to trust me. The first hour and a half is pure setup. And then, if you enjoyed this game, great, we're going to have another at least three sessions to develop it, which I know is not to everyone's cup of tea, but I absolutely love this game. I really enjoyed it. I really would love to do an actual play of it, like a dedicated podcast or actual play with people in it, and we would dress up or anything like that. There's a LARP I think I showed earlier that you could do with it. You could even do it with just 2 people. I think there's something delicious about having it with at least minimum of 4 people though, and playing off each other and stuff. So I think with the right group of people you would absolutely love it. And like I said, I think the artwork's super fun. I would highly recommend, if you're able to get the physical cards if you're playing in person, because it's just nice to have a tactile thing. Let me move to the my to the big Fiona cam. I just love how each of these cards has 2 sides to it, which gives you something a little bit different. And the way you generate the connections and stuff, everything about it is really cool. And as well, again, if you're not into doing like that Good Society, like the sort of core version, there is all these other ones that again comes with its own cards, which is really cool. Like we've got this one, the Service and Ambition deck, Swords and Magic deck, and then what's this one at the end is the Love and Longing deck, which it's basically stuff for like Emma Forget Me Not, all those sort of other ones. Looking at the that acquaintance expanded acquaintance one, some of these playsets seem really cool. Like I said, if you want to play like an upstairs downstairs one, there's like Downstairs at the Abbey, there's like a proper Emma Forget Me Not one, so I think really taking that inspiration from Emma, which is a cracking book, I think, one of my favourite ones. Obviously Magic, you've got Fey Courts, but like Lady Susan P.I. in Regency period like stories, absolutely. Really, really love that as well. But thank you so much everyone for like being here and letting me just talk at you for God, nearly 3 hours again. Gosh. Well, thank you so much. What can I say? If you want to grab this, RPG, have a look. The PDFs are everywhere in both on the Story Brewer role-playing website. They have another RPG out just now called Fight with Spirit, which is like a school drama sports team one, which I heard is very, very good, and maybe I'll cover that on at some other points as well. They also got one called, I think, like a legal one, which sounds really interesting as well. Like, I think all their stuff they ever do is really interesting, and they are wonderful people. They do really good talks as well about game design. Like I said, I just love the game design of this. I love the idea of telling your players you have 10 minutes to write 2 letters to each other. I like the idea that, okay, you've got a monologue token, you can force someone to, force. You can compel someone to do a monologue about a certain point and have those interactions and stuff. No dice rolling, no nothing. It's pure role play. And I think, like I said, I just wish it wasn't. I wish there was a way to make it so people would just come and play this with me. I wish there was a way to make people like stick it out. Because I guess because our time when we're doing role-playing games, we just want to get to that enjoyment, get to that instant gratification and stuff. Whereas something like period drama and regency stuff, it takes its time. It was like revolutionary for its day and stuff. If you want to read stuff about, I think, like I said, Emma is my favourite one. Obviously, Pride and Prejudice is the big one that everyone's heard of. But this is where I'm going to forget all the other ones. Like, I absolutely do recommend Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte. I've not seen too much of Downton Abbey. I now, well, thanks to Crafty Garbo, I now know the name of it rather going, what's the one with Maggie Smith? But equally, any of those sort of period dramas, I think even, Hercule Poirot, perhaps not the same no, it's a bit later on and stuff, but I think anything period drama wise is super interesting. Gentleman Jack with Anne Lister books, Anne Lister diaries. I absolutely love all of that. But yeah, check that out. Thanks for the stream, Fiona. I reckon I could get English literature. Oh, thanks. Hey, well, best of luck. I saw that they've changed the grading system now, and it's gone back to what it was for O levels, so that makes me laugh. But I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I really enjoyed this RPG, and I think there's stuff in it where I'm like, I would use that in a different RPG or something like that. And I do absolutely recommend all of the Story Brewers stuff. But yeah, if you're interested in knowing more, if you're like, Fiona, what are you talking about? I've got a podcast. It's one of my rolling podcasts, which I do twice monthly. We've got some RPGs that are coming out. If you enjoyed this, I did one on Die a little bit earlier this week. God, I've done so many this week because I've just got bored like streaming. Which is again similar sort of mechanics. There's a bit more dice rolling in that, but it's this idea of having you playing someone who's playing a role-playing game who gets sucked into the role-playing game. So basically Goth Jumanji, highly recommend that. We've got a few others coming out. We've got Flabbergasted, which I'll be covering in Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPG soon, because again, very similar vibes to Good Society, that sort of similar art style, I think, as well, a little bit. Really like that game as well. And yeah, so check this out. But also, if you want to check out where all the cool cats and kittens are hanging out, we've got a Discord. You come and check out, talk to me about Good Society, any other RPGs you'd like me to see me read through, and talk to me about. I'm always up for hearing other suggestions, because I'm very aware that I have a lot on my Google Drive, and I don't have enough time to read through. I actually scheduled some more Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPG streams, because I realised mid to late September I'm going to be away, and I won't have access to any of my stuff to stream, so I won't be able to do any of it. And I'm like, oh no, I've actually really enjoyed reading through stuff. So yeah, just thought I'd put that out there as well. I'm just trying to think, what else is there? If you want, there is, I've got an offer code for some dice. Tabletop Dominion, if you're in the UK, if you put in WAIR, W-A-I-R, into their checkout, you get 10% off, which is nice. They've got some nice dice. Clearly, if I remember to put them by my side, I would show you the dice that I got, my own offer code. Not next to me right now. They're ready to be used elsewhere. And finally, also, if you're interested, I am running Alien, the game, part of Girls Run These Worlds. We've just done episode 2, and that was super fun. There's nothing quite like players who aren't au fait with the alien stuff. Introducing players to a new system and a new genre of stuff which they might not be au fait with or have ever tried otherwise is delicious. I definitely feel I'm having a lot of fun with it. So we've got our next episode on Thursday. Check it out. It's on Girls Run These Worlds Twitch. But if you're like, I don't like Twitch for various reasons, I've started putting a playlist on this channel with last season's don't know why I'm whispering. Last season's limited series of Chariot of the Gods, which is like the first in the arc, and this is the second in the arc, which I've started. So the first 2 episodes are up on the YouTube as well, which you can watch if you want more of my face rolling dice and stuff. I think that's everything. I've gabbled on far too long. I very much appreciate you being here with me, and I appreciate your comments and just checking in and just being around. Even if you're just only here for 5 minutes, if you're here for the whole stretch, I really appreciate it. I think Hamilton, my co-host, someone said it's like Fiona just talking at me in the car when I'm going home. It's like, oh, thanks, Hamilton. But you should be listening though. Missed the first one. Must catch up. Oh well, please check it out. Check it out, Crafty Goblin. Let me know what you think. It's all basically. I think Girls from These Worlds are doing it goes out on Twitch, and then within 24 hours, the next episode is going to be on YouTube. You can watch it either on Twitch or YouTube. But I think because of Twitch stuff, we're just trying to get that content out onto YouTube ASAP. Feel free to check it out. And yeah. That's all I have to say. I now have to go get a new cup of tea, put away all the books, prepare for an improv workshop that I'm running in a couple of hours as well. And yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm done. Like I said, have a good rest of your Sunday wherever you are in the world. I will be back Tuesday. I think I've got 2 on Tuesday. You know what? Let me check before I do anything. Let me actually check. I've got a very busy week of tabletop RPGs next week, which is super fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So I've got Flabbergasted as the next one, and then straight after we've got Brindlewood Bay. What a double feature. I'm doing 2 on Tuesday because I like this. I like doing this. I feel very accountable when I do it. So yes, so there's the next 2. I've got Flabbergasted by the Wanderer's Tome, and then Brindlewood Bay by the Gauntlet. So there you go. All right. I'll go. No, you go. You hang up. You hang up. All right. Much love. I'll see you on Tuesday, and I'm going to wave awkwardly as I find the off button. Bye.